Chapter 1899. Hearing Tang Zhanlong's words, many sect leaders, and guardian elders exclaimed. No one would have thought that a martial saint would be forced to this extent. What shocked them even more was that Tang Zhanlong had such determination and courage. Sect leader Tang, you can't do this. Sect leader, you've cultivated for more than 1,000 years to achieve what you have today. How can you destroy your own martial arts? Sect leader Tang, please reconsider. Sect leader, please apologize to Senior Kenshin. Our battle dragon sect surrenders. You can't destroy your own martial arts. Sect leader Shui Jing, sect leader Wen Tian, and the guardian elders of the battle dragon sect all tried to persuade Tang Zhanlong. However, Tang Zhanlong did not waver. His expression was miserable as he revealed a cold, self-mocking smile. Ha ha ha. Everyone, there's no need to persuade me. I've already made a big mistake. For me to reach this stage, I must pay a sufficient price to obtain Senior Kenshin's forgiveness. He slowly raised his head and ignored the sword of burial of heaven in front of him. He stared at Ji Tianqing and said in a serious tone, Senior Kenshin, it was you who gave me half of the sword manual that allowed me to master the battle dragon 4 swords and kill my enemies with my own hands. I also founded the battle dragon sect. I was grateful and should have treated you with the respect of a master, but now, I've done such a thing. I regret it. Junior's cultivation and attainments in the way of the sword are all thanks to you. Now, I'll destroy my own martial arts. Take it as you taking back your kindness. This is the only way I can apologize to you. After saying that, Tang Zhanlong closed his eyes with a determined expression. He slowly raised his hand and moved it towards the top of his head. The more than 30 powerhouses of the 3 sects and 6 schools suddenly felt their hearts in their throats. Their expressions changed drastically as they exclaimed. Ah! Sect leader Tang! Stop it! Sect leader Tang, don't be rash. However, Tang Zhanlong turned a deaf ear to the crowd's exclamations and dissuasion. His right palm firmly struck towards the top of his head. If this palm hit, his lifetime's martial arts would dissipate and his soul would shatter. At that time, he would become a cripple and only have half a life left. Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently. He didn't say anything. It was only when his right palm was about to hit the top of his head that Ji Tianqing used his mind to control the firmament grand array. A vast divine power descended, forming an invisible hand, locking Tang Zhanlong's right arm. Shwa! His right arm was immediately blocked, and he could no longer move. His right palm was only half an inch away from the top of his head, and the surging golden light in his palm was almost touching the top of his head. However, this tiny difference was like a natural moat that he was unable to cross. He was immediately stunned. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at Ji Tianqing with a puzzled expression. Kenshin, Senpai, you, the experts of the 3 sects and 6 schools were also stunned. Then, they all let out a sigh of relief. Many people looked at Ji Tianqing with puzzlement in their eyes. Everyone could not understand. Wasn't Kenshin, Senpai very angry and vowed to kill Tang Zhanlong? Why did he block Tang Zhanlong when he wanted to destroy his own martial arts? Could it be that destroying his own martial arts was not enough? Did he want to kill Tang Zhanlong? At this thought, the experts of the various sects showed complicated expressions and their hearts tightened. Tang Zhanlong also realized this. He showed a sad smile and said in a hoarse voice, well, the majesty of the sword god is not to be blasphemed. I have offended you, and I deserve to die. Since you are not willing to forgive me, I can only apologize with my death. He was completely desperate and no longer had any hope. He immediately activated his martial arts to shatter his soul and kill himself on the spot. He believed that as long as he apologized with his death, Kenshin would not make things difficult for the battle dragon sect. However, just as he was about to activate his martial arts, Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, death is just a coward's escape. Do you think you can end it with your death? Then who will make up for it? Who will save you from your mistakes? Suddenly hearing this, Tang Zhanlong was stunned again and looked at Ji Tianqing in confusion. Senior Kenshin, you mean? He suddenly reacted and vaguely understood something. His eyes were surging with excitement. Ji Tianqing looked down at him and said in a deep voice, seeing that you are sincerely repentant, I will spare your life for the time being and allow you to redeem yourself by doing good deeds. This sentence just confirmed Tang Zhanlong's conjecture, which immediately made him excited and showed a grateful smile of surviving a disaster. He quickly kowtowed and said in a sincere tone, Thank you, Senior, for sparing my life. Thank you, Senior, for being magnanimous and being willing to give me a chance to redeem myself. Rest assured, Senior, I will never make the same mistake again. I swear to support Senior and the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. I am willing to serve you, even if I have to sacrifice my life. When the experts of the 3 sects and 6 schools saw this result, they immediately revealed a grateful expression and were finally relieved. Ji Tianqing expressionlessly took back the Burial of Heaven sword and waved his hand to release a ball of silver flame, which flew towards Tang Zhanlong's forehead. Tang Zhanlong did not dodge and let the ball of silver flame enter his forehead and enter his divine soul. He was very clear that since Kenshin said he would not kill him, he would not take his life. If Kenshin really wanted to kill him, he would have been dead on the spot and would have no chance to resist. Ji Tianqing said indifferently, this ball of star fire seed will lurk in your divine soul for half a month. After half a month, if I don't take it out personally, the fire seed will explode and the star fire will destroy your divine soul. You should understand what I mean. Tang Zhanlong quickly nodded and said, I understand what to do. Please rest assured, Senior. Very good. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and expressed his satisfaction with Tang Zhanlong's attitude. Then, Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked at the experts of the 3 sects and 6 schools. He pointed the Burial of Heaven sword at them and said in a deep voice, those who surrender, kneel. Those who do not surrender, die. The cold voice spread out like a knife, causing everyone's body to tremble as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, and they felt cold all over. More than 30 experts revealed awe and fear in their eyes, and their expressions were quite complicated. If they knelt and surrendered, all their efforts and plans would be in vain. Many people were unwilling. However, even Tang Zhanlong, a martial sage, could not resist the power of Kenshin and could only obediently surrender. Who dared to refuse? So, more than 30 experts knelt down and saluted in unison. The remaining sect leaders and protectors hesitated for a moment and then knelt down. We know our mistakes and repent. We swear to be loyal to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. We only ask for Senior Kenshin's forgiveness and allow us to redeem ourselves. Everyone respectfully knelt on the ground and shouted in unison. Just like that, the 3 sects and 6 schools were subdued by Ji Tianqing easily and without shedding a drop of blood. Huanglong Daoist and several elders smiled proudly and respected Ji Tianqing more and more. Chapter 1900. The powerhouses of the 3 sects and 6 schools only surrendered verbally. How could Ji Tianqing believe them so easily? He waved his hand and shot out a few clusters of star fire seeds, implanting them into the divine souls of several sect leaders. In this way, the leaders of the 3 sects and 6 schools were under his control, and their lives were in his hands. After doing all this, he turned around and left with everyone, walking towards the great meeting hall. But at this moment, Ji Tianqing's divine sense suddenly sensed that there were 2 sneaky figures flashing by the edge of the Taoist hall. They were 2 powerhouses in the tribulation stage. They had been lurking at the edge of the Taoist hall, secretly observing the situation. At this moment, seeing that everyone was going to the conference hall, the 2 of them hurriedly left and wanted to hide. Ji Tianqing only scanned with his divine sense and guessed the identity of the 2 people. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He stopped and ordered the Huanglong Daoist beside him, go and catch the 2 moles. The Huanglong Taoist immediately took the order and teleported out. After a few breaths, he arrived at the edge of the Taoist hall and entered a palace. Ji Tianqing stood in the Taoist hall and waited. Tang Zhanlong and many powerhouses could only wait. However, Tang Zhanlong and the leaders of the various sects heard Ji Tianqing's words. Only then did everyone remember the moles. They could not help but change their expressions, their hearts thumped, and their mood became uneasy. Not long after, the Huanglong Taoist returned with two people in his hands. The person on his left was a purple-robed old man, who was the third elder. The person on his right was a middle-aged man in armor, who was the captain of the guards, Li Ji. Both of them were sealed by the Huanglong Taoist and became weak ordinary people. They were carried in his hands like two chicks. "Master, the moles have been caught." Huanglong came in front of Ji Tianqing and threw the third elder and Li Ji on the ground. Everyone looked over and focused their eyes on the two of them. Everyone's eyes were quite complicated. The people of the Tianzhu mountain looked at them with hatred and disdain. As for the experts from the 3 sects and 6 schools, their gazes were somewhat evasive, and their expressions were also complicated. Ji Tianqing glanced at the third elder and Li Ji, then turned to look at Tang Zhanlong behind him and asked, "Tang Zhanlong, you know these two people, right?" Tang Zhanlong immediately lowered his head and bowed in fear and trepidation, but he did not know what to say. The third elder and Li Ji rushed to his side and shouted anxiously, "Sect Master Tang, please save us. Our identities have been exposed. Please save us and get us out of here." Tang Zhanlong stood motionless in the same place, looking indifferent. The third elder and Li Ji were stunned for a moment. However, upon seeing Zhang Xian's reaction, they immediately understood what was going on. "Sect Master Tang. We've been loyal to you for more than 20 years, and we've done so much for you, yet you're going to stand by and watch us die. Tang Zhanlong. You useless fellow, could it be that you were scared by Ji Tianqing and have already surrendered? Have you forgotten the original intention of this operation? Are you going to give up the plan that you've been preparing for decades?" The third elder and Li Ji had rushed to the edge of the Taoist sanctum, only to find that the two sides were confronting each other under the sword steel. The two of them were still wondering how Tang Zhanlong had broken the protective array. The two of them did not dare to act rashly, so they hid at the edge of the Taoist sanctum and secretly observed the situation. They did not hear clearly what Ji Tianqing and Tang Zhanlong had said to each other. The two of them were also confused about what had happened. But now, seeing the reaction of Tang Zhanlong and the experts of the various sects, the third elder and Li Ji finally understood. There was no doubt that the 3 sects and 6 schools had surrendered to Tianzhu Mountain. The third elder and Li Ji felt as if they had been struck by lightning, and a monstrous sense of grief and indignation surged from their chests. "Tang Zhanlong. You wretched old bastard. You've caused us to expose our identities, and now you're begging to surrender, wagging your tail and begging for mercy. What bullshit martial sage expert. You shameless old bastard. How dare you betray us?" The two of them cursed and glared at Tang Zhanlong with ferocious faces, wishing they could tear him into pieces. Tang Zhanlong was scolded badly, but he could only lower his head and remain silent, unable to defend himself. His eyes were as gloomy as ice, and his face was as black as the bottom of a pot. His mood was extremely complicated. The experts of the various sects were also extremely embarrassed and lowered their heads in shame. This result, was too embarrassing. After the third elder and Li Ji roared for a while, Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "Someone has made a big mistake, and someone must shed blood to atone for it. Tang Zhanlong, you've bribed these two people, and now I'll let you deal with them." Hearing this, Tang Zhanlong's body shook, and he asked with an embarrassed expression, "Let me deal with them?" He hesitated for a moment, then cupped his hands and asked, "Senior, I'll abolish their cultivation and drive them down the mountain. What do you think?" Ji Tianqing did not bother to pay attention to him at all, and turned to leave with an expressionless face. Several elders of Tianzhu Mountain, Ji Bai and Shohei, and the experts of the various sects all followed Ji Tianqing and left. Tang Zhanlong was stunned, and he did not know what to do. He could not figure out Ji Tianqing's meaning. Fortunately, the Huanglong Daoist stayed. He patted Tang Zhanlong's shoulder and said earnestly, "You must think carefully about what Master said. Don't make any more mistakes, or it will be too late to regret." After saying this, the Huanglong Daoist also left. Only Tang Zhanlong, the third elder, and Li Ji were left in the Taoist sanctum. Tang Zhanlong frowned and carefully recalled Ji Tianqing's words. After pondering for a moment, he suddenly understood. Someone must shed blood, to atone for this. Thinking of this, a golden light flashed in his palm, and a golden dragon sword appeared. He held the golden sword and walked toward the third elder and Li Ji, and said with a complicated expression, "Third elder, I'm sorry. Someone must be sacrificed today to appease the anger of Senior Kenshin." The third elder and Li Ji rolled and crawled backward, cursing with a ferocious face. "Tang Zhanlong, you will die a horrible death. You treacherous guy, you will go to hell after death. We are loyal to you, but in the end, you want to kill us. Are you still human? You despicable beast." Tang Zhanlong walked forward step by step, and the guilt on his face gradually dissipated. His eyes gradually became cold and firm. "I have made a mistake once, and I almost lost my life because of it. In the past, I was blinded by greed and became an ungrateful villain. Fortunately, Senior Kenshin showed mercy and spared my life. Now, I will not make the same mistake again. I'm sorry, I can only send you on your way." When his voice fell, he waved the golden sword in his right hand, and a sharp sword light pierced out. Swoosh! The sword light instantly pierced through the third elder's forehead, destroyed his divine soul, and flew out from the back of his head and pierced into Li Ji's forehead. The golden sword light dissipated, and 2 blood flowers splashed out and flew into the sky. The third elder and Li Ji's cursing stopped abruptly, and their vitality quickly dissipated, and they fell to the ground one after another. Chapter 1901. In the main hall of the Pillar of Heaven Palace, Ji Tianqing sat on the bronze throne, while Ji Bai and Shohei stood respectfully on both sides of the throne. The Huanglong Daoist, a few elders, the sect masters of the various sects, and more than 30 experts stood on both sides of the main hall. Everyone stood respectfully with their heads lowered in silence. No one dared to talk or make a ruckus. Ji Tianqing's gaze swept across the crowd as he spoke in a calm and low voice. "I believe everyone understands that the 4 sects of the western region will definitely rush to the Pillar of Heaven Mountain upon hearing the news. Now, let's discuss the countermeasures. I hope everyone can brainstorm together." As his voice fell, the sect masters of the various sects looked at each other and whispered to each other. When everyone surrendered, they had already expected this situation and guessed that they would cooperate with the Pillar of Heaven Mountain to resist the invasion of the 4 sects of the western region. Therefore, everyone was not surprised as they were already mentally prepared. Ji Tianqing leaned on the throne with an indifferent expression as he quietly waited for everyone to come up with a plan. In fact, he had already made the corresponding plans and preparations, and he was confident enough. The reason why he said this was to see the reactions of the various sects and to test everyone's attitude. A moment later, a sect master of a certain sect stood out and cupped his hands towards Ji Tianqing. "Senior Kenshin, this subordinate is stupid and does not have a brilliant plan, but I have a sincere heart. This junior thinks that the flying ships and hundreds of elites of the 3 sects and 6 schools should stay outside the formation and form a battle formation to face the 4 sects of the western region. If the 4 sects of the western region dare to invade, we will join forces to attack and give them a heavy blow." This person's speech received the approval of several sect masters and protectors. Everyone nodded in agreement and expressed to Ji Tianqing that they were willing to charge and break through the enemy lines to protect the Pillar of Heaven Mountain. The sect master of heaven-seeking sect hesitated for a moment before he stood out and cupped his hands. Senior Kenshin, this subordinate thinks that this is inappropriate and needs to be discussed again. Although we have already surrendered and are willing to serve the Pillar of Heaven Mountain, even if we have to sacrifice our lives. However, there is no need for us to make unnecessary sacrifices. A head-on battle is extremely disadvantageous to us. This subordinate thinks that we can pretend to attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, and when the 4 Western sects launch their attack, we can then launch a surprise attack. Many experts' eyes lit up when they heard this. They all felt that this was feasible. Everyone looked at Ji Tianqing expectantly, waiting for him to make a decision. Ji Tianqing did not express his opinion. He looked at Tang Zhanlong calmly and asked, "Tang Zhanlong, do you have any ideas or plans?" Everyone's eyes were focused on Tang Zhanlong. They were secretly worried for him. Everyone understood that this was a test given to him by Lord Kenshin. It was also his first chance to redeem himself after surrendering. Tang Zhanlong was about to blurt out that he swore loyalty to Tianzhu Mountain and was willing to charge and break through the enemy lines. However, he suddenly remembered Huanglong Daoist's reminder and immediately shut his mouth. He lowered his head in silence. After pondering for a moment, he finally understood Ji Tianqing's meaning. Thus, he took 2 steps forward, cupped his hands and saluted, saying, "Zhanlong is slow-witted and has no good plan. I'm only willing to listen to Lord Kenshin's orders." However, Zhanlong boldly speculates that Senior's intention is not to destroy the 4 Western sects, but to subdue them. If both sides fight, there will definitely be casualties and losses, which will be disadvantageous to the future development of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and us. Even if we destroy the 4 Western sects, it will be useless. We still need to send people to guard the dozens of spiritual veins. If we can subdue them without shedding any blood, we can restore the structure of the 9 sects and 18 factions, and then restore the array of the 108 peaks, which will promote the development of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Tang Zhanlong's tone was solemn. He spoke neither too fast nor too slow. His words were clear and logical. When the experts heard this, they came to a sudden realization and were enlightened, and they couldn't help but nod in agreement. Ji Tianqing was still calm and collected. He continued to ask, "Then, in your opinion, how can we subdue the 4 Western sects without shedding any blood?" Tang Zhanlong hesitated for a moment before he spoke. This subordinate believes that Lord already has a plan and strategy in mind. However, since Lord asks, this subordinate can only answer truthfully. The method of subduing the 4 Western sects is the same as the method of subduing the 3 sects and 6 factions. Ordinary disciples and elites don't need to be bothered. Only the leaders and experts of the various sects are allowed in. With Lord's divine power, you can easily subdue the leaders of the various sects and make them willingly surrender. Upon hearing this, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a touch of gratification. He nodded and said, "Well, your idea is good. It's exactly what I want." After receiving Ji Tianqing's affirmation, Tang Zhanlong immediately felt relieved and heaved a sigh of relief. He was a little excited and knew that he had made the right bet. He truly understood Kenshin's intention. The experts of the various sects were secretly delighted and were looking forward to the next good show. After all, this was how they were subdued. They wanted to see how the experts of the 4 Western sects would react, and they saw Lord Kenshin. Not long after, the defense of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was completed. The flying boats and hundreds of disciples of the 3 sects and 6 factions entered the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and settled down in a few courtyards. Many experts stayed in the conference hall, waiting for orders and dispatches at any time. The heavenly dome formation was still operating, maintaining its invisible state and protecting the entire Pillar of Heaven's mountains. On the surface, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains looked calm as usual, as if it had not experienced any war and killing. Everyone waited patiently. A day passed quickly. The next morning, the sun had just risen. In the western sky, there was a colorful stream of light, like a cloud, flying over. In the stream of light that stretched for 10 miles, there were a total of 12 flying boats of different shapes. The first 4 flying boats that flew over were all hundreds of feet long, like a huge warship. The warship's shape was exquisite and beautiful, exuding a majestic dermic power fluctuation, showing a majestic aura. These 4 warships were engraved with sect emblems and hung with sect flags. They were the Boundless Sect, Flying Crane Sect, Red Cloud Sect, and Purple Extreme Sect. Following behind the 4 warships were 8 smaller flying boats. However, these flying boats were agile, and also had decent combat strength. Each flying boat was shining with spiritual light, with different sect flags fluttering. In just a few dozen breaths, the 12 warships and flying boats flew from the horizon to the vicinity of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and stopped 10 miles to the west. The Boundless Sect's golden warship was the most majestic. As the leader of the 4 sects and 8 factions, it was naturally at the front. The warships of the other 3 sects followed closely behind. The 8 flying boats were also behind the warships, waiting for orders and dispatches at any time. Swoosh! 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 A colorful light flashed, and more than 30 experts flew out from the warships and flying boats and gathered in the sky. The leader was a middle-aged man in a white robe with a pale face, exuding a gloomy aura. Chapter 1902. Wuxia stood in the sky with an indifferent expression while holding a green jade flute in his hand. The cold wind blew and ruffled his long white hair, making him look even colder and more desolate. The 11 sect masters and sect masters surrounded him. More than 20 protectors and elders were also clustered around him. Everyone looked down at the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Their faces were filled with doubt as they searched around with their keen eyes. Hey, didn't the 3 sects of the East attack? That's strange. Where are the 3 sects and 6 schools? Why can't I see anyone? What is Tang Zhanlong doing? Have the 3 sects and 6 schools conquered Sky Pillar Mountain? All the experts were filled with doubts as they whispered to each other. Wuxia didn't say anything. He secretly released his divine sense to check the surroundings. Suddenly, he felt something strange and his eyes became gloomy. He raised his left hand and punched out a huge 5-colored palm towards the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The 5-colored giant palm flew halfway and was blocked by a layer of invisible shield. Bang! With a deafening muffled explosion, the 5-colored giant palm collapsed on the spot and exploded into light fragments that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. In the originally empty sky, a light barrier with a radius of a few hundred miles appeared out of thin air, enveloping the entire Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Seeing this scene, all the experts revealed looks of astonishment, and another wave of clamorous discussion broke out. Is that the mountain protection array? Since when did Sky Pillar Mountain have a mountain protection array? That's strange. I heard that the mountain protection array of Sky Pillar Mountain was closed hundreds of years ago. It is said that Kenshin set up the Sky Dome Array. It can protect Sky Pillar Mountain for thousands of years and is extremely powerful. How can it be reactivated after hundreds of years? Who has the ability to reactivate it? Some people had heard about the history of the Sky Dome Array and knew that the Divine Array was extremely powerful. Some experts didn't know about the legend of thousands of years ago and didn't take the array seriously. On the other hand, Wuxia and the other sect leaders knew how powerful the heavenly dome formation was. Their faces darkened at once. The Flying Crane sect master frowned and probed, Sect Master Wuxia, if the Sky Pillar Mountain could activate the Sky Dome formation, they would have done so hundreds of years ago. Why wait until now? So I'm guessing that it's probably the doing of the 3 great sects of the East. The Scarlet Cloud sect master glanced at him and said in disbelief, You mean that the 3 eastern sects have already occupied the Pillar of Heaven's mountains? Sect Master Purple Extreme nodded his head with a solemn expression and said, It's very likely. When we received the news, the 3 eastern sects had already moved out. Looking at the time, they should have reached the Pillar of Heaven's mountains yesterday. Perhaps they would have breached the Pillar of Heaven's mountains within a few hours. Hearing this, the sect leaders and protectors all showed expressions of righteous indignation. Then what are we waiting for? Take this opportunity to break through the mountain protecting formation and snatch the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The 3 eastern sects are so despicable. They actually snatched the Pillar of Heaven's mountains before us. This is like snatching food from a tiger's mouth. We can't let them gain a foothold. We have to attack immediately. The 4 sects and 8 schools' armies have just arrived. Our morale is at its peak. Now is the best time to attack. Everyone's opinions and thoughts were surprisingly consistent. Wuxia raised his hand and calmed everyone down. He held the jade flute in his right hand and pointed at the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. He ordered in a dignified tone, "Disciples of the 4 sects and 8 schools, listen to my order. Immediately form a battle formation and join forces to attack the mountain protecting formation. Whoever can be the first to rush in will be rewarded with tens of millions of resources." All the sect leaders cupped their hands in obeisance and immediately went to pass on the order. Soon, the 12 warships formed a battle formation in the sky. Each warship extended a pair of wings and lit up with a bright brilliance, releasing a powerful array formation power. Hundreds of elite masters and disciples flew out of the warships and quickly formed a battle formation. Following Wuxia's order, the 1,500 elite disciples joined forces to cast a secret spell, casting a spell that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, pouring down on Sky Pillar Mountain. The sky was full of saber light and sword shadows. All kinds of light pillars of ice and fire shot out like a rain of arrows, bursting out with destructive power. Boom, 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 boom. More than 1,000 people joined forces to release spells and continuously bombarded the mountain protecting formation, creating earth-shattering sounds. The huge 5-colored light shield was immediately shaken by the bombardment. Light flickered and layers of ripples spread out. The violent shockwave turned into a 5-colored torrent that spread out in all directions and swept across the sky for hundreds of miles. Such a mighty attack was absolutely unprecedented in history. It was spectacular to the extreme. Many sect leaders, and elders were dazzled by the sight, their hearts surging with excitement. Our 12 great sects have joined forces and gathered more than 1,500 elite disciples. We are absolutely invincible. That's right. We have carefully planned this for so long. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains must be ours. The 3 sects of the East are nothing. Once we break the mountain protecting formation, we can kill our way into the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and catch them all in one fell swoop. Sect leaders, guardians and elders, don't be idle. Let's join forces to attack the mountain protecting formation and try to kill our way into the Pillar of Heaven's mountains as soon as possible. Soon, more than 30 powerhouses in the tribulation stage joined forces to release destructive spells and launched a fierce attack on the mountain protecting formation. The colorful light shadows of spells continued to sprinkle on the peak of the mountain, illuminating the sky for hundreds of miles. The deafening sound was like a thunderclap, reverberating endlessly in the sky. Except for Wuxia, everyone was using all their strength to release spells recklessly. However, the huge 5-colored light shield trembled for a quarter of an hour, but it didn't shatter. No matter how powerful the spells were, the 5-colored light shield could absorb the power of the spells and transmit it to the heavens and earth, quickly dissolving it. The earth-shattering attack continued for a full half an hour without stopping. There was not even a crack on the 5-colored light shield. It was still safe and sound. The expressions of the sect leaders and elders of the various sects gradually became solemn, and the hot blood in their chests gradually cooled down. They finally realized that the defensive power of the 5-colored light shield was far beyond their imagination. Wuxia's expression also became more serious. He murmured in a cold voice, "It is indeed a genuine heavenly array. It is worthy of being a divine array set up by Kenshin himself." He waved his sleeve and ordered the attack to stop. "Disciples of the 4 sects and 8 factions, stop attacking immediately in rest." The attacks of more than 1,500 people came to an abrupt stop. The sky full of spells also gradually dispersed. Countless disciples' faces were pale and their breaths were weak. They hurriedly took out elixirs and consumed them to restore their dermic powers. Wuya held the jade flute and flew to the 5-colored light shield. He cast spells with a serious expression, waving the jade flute to release light shadows. Star cut. He finally made a move himself. Moreover, the secret technique he used originated from the sword god's teachings. Chapter 1903. Swish, swish, swish. Bai Qing waved his jade flute and shot out hundreds of beams of light, which formed a mysterious seal. After 2 breaths, the seal was completed. It looked like a huge golden talisman. When the seal released an invisible force, silver light spots fell from the sky and gathered in the talisman. That was the power of the stars absorbed by the seal. Soon, the talisman became silver and powerful. Slash! Wuya shouted coldly as he formed a seal with his left hand and waved his jade flute with his right hand. The 30-meter-tall silver talisman instantly transformed into a 30-meter-long silver sword and slashed viciously at the mountain-guarding grand array. Such a powerful and terrifying starry sword light caused the crowd to cheer. Many disciples had looks of worship on their faces. Kaboom! In the next moment, the huge starry sword light fell from the sky and slashed at the 5-colored light shield. There was a thunderous sound. Suddenly, the starry sword light shattered into silver light and spread in all directions. The violent energy exploded, like a silver wave of air sweeping across the sky. The multicolored light shield trembled violently for a few times, and a 3-feet-long crack appeared on the shield, forming a narrow gap. When the dazzling light disappeared, the gap did not close. Seeing this, Wuya's lips curled into a gratified smile. The sect leaders, patriarchs, custodians, and elders behind him also wore smiles on their faces and cheered in unison. As for the 1,000 elite disciples, they raised their arms and shouted excitedly. Sect Master Wuya is mighty. He broke the protective array and the pillar of heaven's mountain is doomed. As expected of a martial saint expert, the power of this sword is actually so strong. So what if the pillar of heaven's mountain's great protective formation is powerful? It can't stop Sect Master Wuya's sword. How ironic. The heavenly dome formation personally laid down by the sword god was actually broken by his own ultimate skill, /. What are you waiting for? Let's go in and destroy the 3 eastern sections. Then, the pillar of heaven's mountain will be ours. Wuya knew clearly that he had not really broken the heavenly formation. He had only created a temporary gap. After a while, the gap would close automatically. Therefore, he rushed to the gap without hesitation. He turned into a beam of light and went in. The sect masters and sect leaders quickly followed him. They all used secret techniques to shrink their bodies and went through the gap into the protective array. Then, more than 20 guardians and elders entered the gap one by one. After more than 30 experts had entered, the elite disciples of the various sects also flew toward the gap. However, before they could get close, the gap closed quickly. More than 1,000 elite disciples were blocked outside the array. They could only return to the warships and flying boats. Wuya had expected this outcome, so he wasn't surprised at all. He ordered the sect masters and headmasters, tell the disciples to wait outside the formation and be ready to attack at any time. Let's go to the pillar of heaven's mountains to see what's going on. The sect masters and sect leaders hurriedly passed down the order. In a moment, Wuya led more than 30 experts and landed on the Taoist sanctum. Everyone took out their weapons and looked around vigilantly. They were ready to attack at any time. When everyone arrived at the foot of the sword steel, a dazzling brilliance suddenly flashed in the open space 1,000 feet in front of them. Swoosh! With a flash of colorful light, more than 20 figures of different shapes appeared on the Taoist sanctum. The sudden change startled the experts of the 4 sects and 8 schools. They stopped and pointed their weapons at the newcomers. Their nerves were tense. Wuxia frowned as well. He looked sharply at the crowd and saw many familiar faces. Huanglong Daoist, Tang Zhanlong, the sect masters and sect leaders of the 3 sects and 6 schools, and more than 20 guardians and elders. Seeing this, Wuxia's heart skipped a beat, and his brows furrowed. Why are the people of the Pillar of Heaven's mountain with the 3 sects and 6 schools? The 30 or so experts behind him also noticed that something was wrong and realized that the situation was not good. That's not right. Didn't the 3 sects and 6 schools occupy the Pillar of Heaven's mountain? How could this be? Has the Pillar of Heaven's mountain surrendered to Tang Zhanlong? No, look at the white-robed young man. He seems to be the leader. Huanglong Daoist and Tang Zhanlong are standing behind him. Who is he? As long as one wasn't a fool, they would know that something was wrong. Many people's attention was focused on Ji Tianqing. They were sizing him up with confusion. Wuxia and the other sect masters also stared at Ji Tianqing with sharp eyes, sizing him up. Seeing Ji Tianqing's face clearly, Wuxia and the other sect masters' faces changed dramatically, and their bodies stiffened on the spot. Everyone's eyes were wide open. Their expressions and eyes were full of horror. It was as if they had seen the most horrible and unbelievable thing. The Supreme Headmasters and Supreme Headmasters, in particular, were filled with shock and fear. Their bodies were shaking uncontrollably. After a long while, everyone came back to their senses, and they all let out low roars and roars. Why does this white-robed young man look so much like that person? It can't be him. He has been dead for thousands of years. He can't be resurrected. How can there be such a similar person in the world? Not only does he look the same, but his eyes and temperament are also the same. It can't be him. It can't be him. Wuxia and the sect masters had seen Kenshin's face in the past. They had a deep impression of Kenshin's power and would never forget it. Even after thousands of years, the memory in the depths of their souls would not be blurred. Now that they saw the sword god arrive in person, everyone's hearts were raised, and they felt reverence from the bottom of their souls. At this moment, Huanglong and Tang Zhanlong opened their mouths at the same time. Their voices were cold and dignified. How dare you rebel? His Excellency, the Sword God, is here in person. Why don't you kneel down and apologize? Their voices were mixed with a powerful soul-shocking force, and it shook the souls of numerous experts to the point of trembling, causing them to feel even more terrified and uneasy. Only now did those guardians and elders who were unaware come to a sudden understanding. So that white-robed young man was the legendary sword god. No. Didn't Kenshin die thousands of years ago? How could he be alive now? How could he appear in front of everyone alive? Many guardians and elders came to their senses and had the same thought in their minds. Confusion, uneasiness, worry, and awe filled the experts' hearts with all kinds of emotions. At this time, Wuxia stared at Ji Tianqing and asked in a deep voice, "Boy, who are you? Why are you pretending to be Kenshin?" Huanglong Daoist and Tang Zhanlong frowned and sneered. Pretending? Wuxia, you have a rich imagination. It's a pity that you are blind. Today, you will die here. Chapter 1904. The crowd's reaction made Wuxia's face even gloomier. His whole body was filled with a murderous aura. Laugh. Is it funny? Could it be that you think that by finding someone who looks similar to the sword god, you can intimidate me and save the Pillar of Heaven's mountains from danger? If so, then you are too naive. Wuya gripped his jade flute tightly and said coldly. An invisible murderous aura spread out and covered a radius of 10 miles. Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and said slowly, "Do you know why I opened a gap in the array and let you in?" Wuya frowned and sneered, "Haha. I was the one who broke the array, and you say you opened it. Brat, don't play tricks in front of this seat. In a moment, this seat will make you kneel down and beg for mercy, living a life worse than death." Ji Tianqing frowned and his eyes grew colder. He said in a low voice, "I was going to give you a chance to kneel and admit your mistake, and maybe I will spare your life. But now it seems that you don't want to cherish this chance." Haha. Wuya threw his head back and laughed. His white hair danced in the wind, and his whole body was filled with murderous aura. "Boy, you're too good at pretending. Do you really think you are Kenshin? Do you think I am as stupid as Tang Zhanlong? Do you really think I am a Kenshin? Now I will give you one chance. Kneel and surrender to me, and I will spare your life." Ji Tianqing could see his attitude. Maybe he didn't believe it, or he didn't want to believe it, and he didn't want to give up his plan to take over Sky Pillar Mountain. He didn't want to waste any more words with Wuya. His eyes flashed with pity, and he said in a low voice, "Stubborn fool." As he spoke, he slowly raised his right hand and formed a spell with his 5 fingers. He sent out several rays of golden light into the Taoist field. Suddenly, the heavenly array sped up and its power was raised to the limit. A mighty and invisible force of heaven and earth came down from the sky and pressed down on Wuya and the 30 experts. Boom! Following an earth-shattering explosion, more than 30 powerhouses suddenly suffered a heavy blow, and all of them knelt on the ground. The ground was smashed open by the crowd, causing dust to fly up into the air. The entire mountain peak was trembling. The knees of all the tribulation-passing cultivators were shattered, and dark red blood gushed out from them. Their mouths and noses were also bleeding. Their faces were as pale as paper, and they bowed their heads. No one under the martial saint realm could withstand the suppression of the heavenly array. Everyone's face was full of horror, and their eyes were full of fear. Even the strongest of them, Wuya, was kneeling on one knee, blood dripping from his mouth and nose. However, he held the jade flute in his right hand and inserted it into the stone floor. He tried his best to support his body and not kneel down. Ji Tianqing looked down at the leaders, elders, protectors, and said expressionlessly, "Apart from Wuya, I'll give you 2 choices." He growled and released a sacred and mighty pressure. Like an invisible wind, it swept toward the crowd. All the experts who were enveloped by his pressure couldn't help but tremble in fear. They felt reverence from the bottom of their souls. The expressions of the 30 experts changed dramatically. Some lowered their heads in fear. Some looked at their companions anxiously and whispered to each other. But most of them were looking at Wuya to see how he would react. At this moment, Wuya slowly raised his sleeve and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He ran his magic power and stood up. He stared at Ji Tianqing with sharp eyes and asked in a low voice, "Boy, who the hell are you?" Ji Tianqing ignored him and continued to control the heavenly array to release a powerful suppression force. Huanglong Daoist looked at Wuya with pity and shouted angrily, "Wuya, you are hopeless. Shizuan is merciful and originally wanted to spare your life and give you a chance to redeem yourself through meritorious service. But you ruined that chance with your own hands and pushed yourself into the abyss of death. No one can save you now. Kill yourself to atone for your sins." Taoist Huanglong's solemn tone did not seem to be fake. Wuya's body shook and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Is he really Kenshin? That's impossible. That's ridiculous. I won't believe it even if I die. You want me to kill myself? Dream on. Wuya raised his right hand and waved the green jade flute. 2 rays of 5-colored spiritual light were shot toward Ji Tianqing. The 2 rays of spiritual light formed a huge light sword. With the power to pierce through everything, it arrived in front of Ji Tianqing in an instant. Huanglong Daoist and Tang Zhanlong's expressions changed and they were about to stop it. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, took a step forward and used his body to collide with the 2 sword lights. His expression was indifferent. He ignored the power of the 2 rays of sword light and showed his unparalleled confidence. This scene caused everyone present to widen their eyes and reveal a look of shock. Even Huanglong Daoist and Tang Zhanlong could not believe that Ji Tianqing would take the attack of a martial sage. That was crazy. Bang! Bang! 2 muffled sounds burst out at the same time. The 2 rays of 5-colored sword light hit Ji Tianqing squarely. But his body became translucent, as if he had merged with heaven and earth. Even his aura became illusory. The 2 sword lights collapsed on the spot, exploding into fragments that filled the sky and splashed out in all directions. But he was not hurt at all. He did not even take half a step back. Everyone was stunned. They were completely dumbfounded. Countless experts widened their eyes and opened their mouths, exclaiming in disbelief. Even Wuya was stunned for a moment and his eyes widened in horror. At the same time, Ji Tianqing pinched his fingers and drew golden arcs in the air to form a mysterious seal. Wuya, the star cut you've learned from me is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, I'll show you what the real star cut is. As his voice trailed off, a huge star seal had been formed. Immediately, countless rays of light streaked across the sky and turned into dazzling silver starlight, pouring into the seal. Even Ji Tianqing's palm surged with starry divine fire and enveloped the seal. In the next moment, the huge seal condensed into a huge star sword that was hundreds of feet long. With endless power, it slashed toward Wuya. From the time Ji Tianqing cast the spell to the time the star sword slashed out, it was only the blink of an eye. He was 10 times faster than Wuya. What was more terrifying was that he could draw the power of the stars and make them fall like meteors. This was the power of a martial god. Chapter 1905. Wuya's proudest move was the star slash. It was the secret skill that Kenshin had taught him, and its power was terrifying. It was his greatest honor to be able to receive the teachings and guidance of the sword god. Now, Ji Tianqing was also using the secret skill, star cut. His movements were as smooth as flowing water, and his skill in swordsmanship was superb. Wuya was dumbfounded. It was as if he had returned to 1,500 years ago, when he saw Kenshin use the skill with his own eyes. At that moment, he even believed that Ji Tianqing was Kenshin. But it was too late. Kaboom! With a deafening boom, the starry sword hit Wuya. Starlight burst out, covering the sky, and dust rose into the air. The entire peak of Pillar of Heaven's mountains shook violently dozens of times. Even the incomparably solid ground was cut open by the starry sword, leaving behind a 1,000-foot-long gully. The earth shook, and the mountains shook. Fortunately, the sword only caused so little damage in the training hall. If it struck a city, the city within a radius of 100 miles would be instantly destroyed and turned into ruins. After a long time, the loud sound in the sky stopped, and the dazzling starlight gradually dissipated. Only then did the crowd see the situation clearly. The 2 sect lords and sect leaders closest to Wuya were all affected by the aftershock of the star slash. The 4 tribulation stage experts were cut into pieces on the spot. Even their divine souls were destroyed. They were completely dead. The remaining 30 or so experts were also sent flying, lying on the dojo in a mess. All of them were badly mangled and badly injured. They were constantly screaming in pain. As for Wuya, as expected of a martial saint expert. Even after suffering such a devastating blow, he was still able to preserve his life. He lay in the ditch, covered in blood and mud. His gray hair was disheveled, and he looked particularly miserable. His left arm was cut off, and there were several hideous wounds on his shoulder, chest, and legs. Blood kept flowing out. He curled up in the deep ravine and quietly took out a thumb-sized ball from his spatial ring. The blood-red ball was a special secret treasure that emitted a surging blood chi. Golden light shone from his palm as he crushed the blood-red ball into pieces. Instantly, a ball of dazzling blood-red light exploded and quickly enveloped his entire body. Shwa! In the blink of an eye, the wounds all over his body healed quickly. Even his severed left arm grew back. Moreover, his magic power was also increasing rapidly, and his strength was increasing crazily. On the dojo, over 30 injured experts were intimidated by Ji Tianqing's aura, and were scared out of their wits. There were 4 indecisive sect leaders who no longer dared to hesitate. Enduring their injuries, they knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Ji Tianqing, begging for mercy. Lord Kenshin, we were blind, we shouldn't have offended you. We deserve to die. But you can't blame us. It was Ni Wuya who forced us to join the operation. Otherwise, he would kill us. Please have mercy, Lord Kenshin. We are willing to submit. We will never betray the pillar of heaven's mountains again. The sect leaders of the 4 sects begged for mercy. Their guardians and elders also knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. The Scarlet Cloud sect leader and the other 2 sect leaders were originally hesitant and couldn't make a decision. If they continued to resist, they would definitely be killed by Kenshin on the spot and die tragically on the dojo. If they knelt and begged for mercy, they would be too spineless and would be laughed at by everyone. However, when they saw the 4 sect leaders kneeling and begging for mercy, they heaved a sigh of relief. They quickly knelt down and kowtowed to Ji Tianqing to admit their wrongdoings. In an instant, more than half of the 30 experts knelt down to show their submission. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said indifferently, "The sea of bitterness is boundless, repent and be saved. Since this is your first offense and you haven't caused any serious consequences, I will forgive you this time. You may all leave." Hearing this, the crowd felt as if they had been pardoned. They hurriedly retreated and took out pills to heal their injuries. In the blink of an eye, there were only a dozen experts left on both sides of the deep ravine who refused to surrender. These experts came from the Boundless sect, Flying Crane sect, Ziji sect and 2 other sects. They were very loyal to Ni Wuya and supported him. Ji Tianqing slowly walked towards the deep ravine. He planned to eliminate Ni Wuya first and then kill the remaining experts. But at this moment, a golden light shone from the ravine and a figure flew out. Swoosh! Ni Wuya, who had been severely injured, flew out unscathed. He flew into the sky and stood there, looking down at Ji Tianqing and laughing. Ha ha ha. Boy, you are not Kenshin at all. I have seen through you. You are just Kenshin's successor at best. The secret technique you used was only the power of the heavenly formation. Now I am going to break the heavenly formation. Let's see what else you can rely on. Ni Wuya's face was ferocious. His eyes were filled with mockery, as if victory was already in his grasp. He waved his hand and ordered more than 1,000 disciples outside the formation to attack the heavenly formation with all their might. After the order was passed down, more than 1,000 experts and disciples from different sects formed battle formations and launched the attack. But there were still more than 500 people hiding in the warships and flying boats. They were hesitant and did not dare to attack. After all, the sects they belonged to had already surrendered to Tianzhu Mountain. Ji Tianqing frowned and stared at Ni Wuya coldly. He thought to himself, this Ni Wuya is really something. He can see through me. Yes, his real strength was only at LV3 Tribulation Passing Realm. It was impossible for him to injure a martial sage and suppress more than 30 experts. He had hidden his strength with the celestial formation and used the heavenly formation to release such a powerful force. If he left the heavenly formation, he would not be a match for Wuya, let alone suppress the experts from the 4 sects and 8 schools. Soon, more than 1,000 elite disciples joined forces to use their secret techniques. They released a sky full of light and shadows, which poured down like a torrential flood. Boom, boom, boom. All kinds of light and shadows bombarded the 5-colored light shield, creating a deafening sound. The power of the heavenly formation was suppressed and weakened imperceptibly. Wuya waved his hand again and ordered, "Everyone, this guy is a fake. He is not the real Kenshin. Don't be scared by him. Let's kill him together." As soon as he finished speaking, he threw out a few palm shadows with his left hand and waved the jade flute with his right hand. Sword light filled the sky and rushed toward Ji Tianqing. Sect Master Zji, Sect Master Fei He, and more than a dozen experts were suddenly energized. They rushed toward Ji Tianqing with murderous intent and began to besiege him. It seemed that Ji Tianqing was about to be surrounded by many experts. At this time, Huanglong Daoist, Tang Zhanlong, and the others roared and rushed out with magic weapons in their hands. "How dare you behave so atrociously in Tianzhu Mountain? You are tired of living. You want to besiege Master Kenshin? You have to get through me first." Chapter 1906. Following a series of furious roars, a chaotic battle began. Huanglong Daoist and Tang Zhanlong were the first to rush out, leading more than 20 experts to fight. Sect Master Zji, Sect Master Feiha, and a dozen other experts were immediately blocked. They couldn't get close to Ji Tianqing. The experts who had knelt and begged for mercy retreated to the edge of the dojo, healing themselves while watching the battle. They wanted to see if the white-robed young man was Kenshin. If Wuya's side lost, they would have surrendered to Sky Pillar Mountain and would be safe. If the Pillar of Heaven's mountains were defeated, they could still join Wuya's side. In short, they were a bunch of fence-sitters. While the experts were fighting fiercely, Ji Tianqing jumped out of the crowd and flew into the sky. He stood on the 1,000-feet sword steel and slowly reached out his right hand. The huge sword steel lit up with 5-colored spirit light, and a 4-foot-long pitch-black sword flew out and fell into his palm. With the sacred sword in hand, he exuded a murderous aura and a domineering aura. At this moment, Wuya rushed over, waving his jade flute. "Brat, prepare to die." Wuya's left hand sent out a huge palm shadow, while his right hand held the jade flute and sent out 9 beams of sword light. "You asked for it." Ji Tianqing shouted coldly. His left hand formed a spell to draw in the power of heaven and earth, while his right hand held the sword of burial of heaven and stabbed at Wuya. Sword of the Breaking Sun. The Heaven Burier sword shot out 9 dazzling beams of sword light, carrying the golden light, purple thunderbolts, and the divine fire of the stars toward Wuya. Bang, bang, bang. Wuya's palm shadow and sword light were all destroyed in a deafening explosion. Numerous sword lights collapsed and exploded, causing lightning and starry divine flames that covered the sky and sprayed down like a torrential downpour. When the two of them clashed, they were actually evenly matched. Neither of them could gain the upper hand. This made Wuya even more certain that Ji Tianqing was definitely not Kenshin. If it was the real Kenshin, he would have been crushed to death with a single finger. How could he be tied with him? Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry. His left hand was still casting spells, desperately absorbing the divine energy of heaven and earth. As the boundless divine power of heaven and earth surged into his body, his strength skyrocketed, and his body expanded rapidly. In just a few breaths of time, he had transformed into a 30-meter-tall giant. His entire body was shining with a dazzling golden light. The power in his body had already reached the martial sage realm. As it surged, it let out a thunderous roar, which was terrifying. Fortunately, his physical body had been tempered to the extreme and had fused with the heaven and earth for thousands of miles. Only then could he withstand such terrifying power. If it were an ordinary tribulation stage powerhouse, even if he was in the 9th stage of the tribulation stage, he would explode on the spot. Heaven-splitting sword. Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed out a 100-meter-long sword light at Wuya. Wuya was not to be outdone. He waved his jade flute, creating hundreds of arcs that formed a huge seal. 8 skills of heaven sealing. The mountain-sized golden seal formed a 100-meter-wide disc that wrapped around Wuya like a shield. Kaboom! The heaven-splitting sword struck the 300-meter-long disc with a loud bang, and a thunderous explosion shook the heavens. The golden disc exploded on the spot, turning into millions of fragments that scattered everywhere. Wuya was also sent flying, blood spurting out of his nose and mouth. Such an outcome caused his expression to become aghast, and his eyes surged with intense anger. Damn it! This is the dojo of Sky Pillar Mountain, protected by the heavenly dome array. I am fighting him here, but my strength is suppressed by the array. I can only use 60% of my strength. His strength, on the other hand, was skyrocketing. No. I have to escape from the heavenly dome array to kill him. Wuya knew that the heavenly dome array was the source of Ji Tianqing's power. As long as he could escape from the heavenly dome array, Ji Tianqing would be at his mercy. After making up his mind, he turned around and ran without hesitation, flying toward the 5-colored light shield in the sky. Swoosh! Star cut. As he ran, Wuya waved his jade flute and used the star cut, trying to break through the 5-colored light shield. Ji Tianqing chased after him and shouted coldly, "Do you really think you can break through my heavenly dome array? God-killing sword!" He roared, holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and unleashing all his dermic powers, stabbing at Wuya. At that moment, his 30-meter-tall body and the 30-meter-long sword of burial of heaven became one, turning into a giant golden sword. Man and sword became one, and like a shooting star, it pierced through the sky and hit Wuya. Kaboom! A loud sound that shook the 9 heavens exploded, spreading over a radius of a few hundred miles, shaking the entire pillar of heaven's mountains. The golden light scattered in all directions, turning into flames that covered the sky and sprinkled over the spacious dojo. Wuya's body was pierced through by the giant sword. Blood gushed out of his chest as he let out a blood-curdling scream. Awe! His chest cracked open, revealing a hole the size of a basin. His organs were all shattered. His arms and legs were broken, and his entire body was covered in cracks, like a broken porcelain bowl. He had never been so severely injured in his life. His physical body had been destroyed, and even his soul had been shaken to the point of cracking. His consciousness had become blurry and chaotic. At this moment, Wuya's heart was filled with regret. He did not regret his decision to invade the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. He only hated himself for rushing into the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. If he knew that Ji Tianqing was so strong, he would have planned better and found a chance to kill Ji Tianqing outside the Sky Pillar Mountain. But now, it was too late to say anything. Just as he fell from the sky, Ji Tianqing waved his left hand and used a secret skill. Star-shattering fist. Endless starry divine fire converged into a giant fist and smashed towards Wuya like a meteor. This was the real star-shattering fist. Wuya looked at the sky with misty eyes. He could only watch the star fist coming at him, but he couldn't dodge it. Kaboom! Another earth-shattering explosion resounded through the universe. Wuya's body was instantly smashed into thousands of pieces of flesh and blood, scattering in the sky. The raging star flame engulfed the pieces of flesh, igniting them and turning them into silver sparks. His divine soul was also shattered into dozens of pieces and was gradually burned away by the star fire. At this moment, the dojo within 100 miles was shrouded in starlight. It was dazzling and stunning. When the endless starlight fell to the ground, everything disappeared. Wuya, a martial arts saint, the sect master of the Wuya sect, was completely gone. Seeing this, the battle on the dojo came to an abrupt end. Everyone looked up at the sky. Their eyes widened in shock, and they revealed complicated expressions. The people of the Sky Pillar Mountain and the 3 sects and 6 schools were filled with awe and pride. Chapter 1907. Half of the people from the 4 sects and 8 schools had already surrendered to Ji Tianqing. Of the remaining 17 experts, 4 had died and 5 were severely injured in the fierce battle just now. Now that Wuxia had been killed by Ji Tianqing, the remaining 13 experts did not dare to resist anymore. After a moment of shock, they all knelt down and surrendered. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky, looking down at the people who had surrendered. He waved his hand and shot out dozens of divine star fires. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The divine star fires drilled into the people's foreheads and hid in their divine souls. As long as Ji Tianqing willed it, he could make those star fire seeds explode, instantly taking away everyone's lives. Wuxia has already been killed. You can be spared from death for surrendering. But you have followed Wuxia and rebelled. You can't escape punishment. I'll give each of you a divine star fire seed. I can kill you instantly with just a thought. Now your lives are in your own hands. I don't need to teach you. You should know what to do. The 13 survivors quickly kowtowed and shouted, "Thank you, Lord Kenshin, for sparing our lives. We will forever be loyal to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. We are willing to atone for our crimes." Ji Tianqing nodded and ordered in a dignified voice, "Since all the sects are gathered here, I will announce a task. 5 days later, I will repair the Big Dipper Starry Formation and the Earth Fiend Spirit Praying Formation. All the sect leaders, and guardians, stay here. Elders, lead your disciples back to your sects and await further orders." More than 30 experts on the dojo bowed to show that they had obeyed the order. Then, Ji Tianqing operated the Heavenly Dome Formation and opened a passage. The dozen or so elders turned around and left with their disciples. They quickly left on their flying boats. The disciples of the 3 sects and 6 schools who were hiding in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains also crossed the training ground and went through the passage of the formation. After an hour, the disciples of the 9 sects and 18 schools had all left. Peace returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Only around 20 patriarchs, and custodians remained on the dojo. Ji Tianqing led everyone into the Heavenly Pillar Palace's conference hall and began to discuss official matters. He sat on the bronze throne at the head of the table, with Ji Bai and Shohei standing behind him. Huanglong Daoist and Tang Zhanlong stood on both sides of the hall. Both of them were martial sages and were currently Ji Tianqing's strongest subordinates. They had hopes of becoming his right-hand men. The remaining 20 or so experts lined up behind Huanglong Daoist and Tang Zhanlong. Ji Tianqing swept his dignified gaze across the entire place. With a dignified tone, he said, "The Boundless Sect and Flying Crane sect masters are both dead. The sect master position is now empty. For the time being, the protectors of the 2 sects would assume the role of sect master and jointly manage the affairs of the sect. I will observe for a period of time before appointing a new sect master." Hearing his words, the left and right protectors of the 2 sects revealed excited expressions. They hurriedly cupped their hands to express their obedience. The 4 of them made up their minds to perform well and strive to win the recognition of Lord Kenshin. Although Ji Tianqing did not go to the 9 sects and 18 schools to investigate, nor did he patrol the 108 mountains. But he could guess that the Heavenly Spirit Star Luo and the Earth Fiend Spirit Prayer Array were closed because of the destruction of the various sections. Therefore, he gave different orders to the various patriarchs, asking them to go back and prepare the materials for the array. The patriarchs present were all implanted with the Star Divine Fire. Everyone's lives were in his hands. They could only follow his orders and did not dare to have any thoughts of betrayal. Finally, Ji Tianqing ordered everyone to keep their mouths shut. Regarding his identity, they must keep it strictly confidential and must not reveal it. The 20 or so experts all expressed that they would keep their mouths shut. The meeting ended here. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and dismissed everyone. The leaders of the 21 sects all bowed and took their leave, leaving the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. When everyone left, only the people of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains were left in the main hall, and it suddenly quieted down. Huanglong Daoist revealed a gratified smile and said, "Master, I really didn't expect that you could resolve the crisis of our sect so easily and subdue the 9 sects and 18 schools just like that. Now that the 9 sects and 18 schools have all submitted, they no longer dare to have any thoughts of rebellion. Soon, when you repair the Heavenly Spirit Star Luo and the Earth Fiend Spirit Prayer Array, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains will be able to return to its former prosperity." Ji Tianqing only nodded and did not say anything. The process of subduing the 9 sects and 18 schools seemed very easy. But only he knew the difficulties and twists and turns in it. It was impossible for him to do it with his strength. It was all relying on the power of the firmament array, the star divine furnace, and the burial of heaven sword. He only achieved this result with a thorough plan and sufficient preparation. More importantly, no one expected him to suddenly appear and come back from the dead. His prowess back then was too great, and the influence he had on the 9 sects and 18 schools did not dissipate for thousands of years. With all these reasons, coupled with the right time, place, and people, it allowed him to successfully subdue the 9 sects and 18 schools. If the other party was already prepared and did not enter the firmament array, then he would have no way. Of course, he knew this in his heart, but he would not say it out loud. "Huanglong, Master will go into seclusion for a few days to prepare for the next thing. You will lead everyone to repair the training hall and the buildings, reinforce the array, and deal with the aftermath. At most 1 month later, after Master has repaired the Heavenly Spirit Star Luo and the Earth Fiend Spirit Prayer Array, we will recruit more disciples and expand our power." Huanglong Daoist was stunned for a moment, and his eyes revealed a strong sense of anticipation. He hurriedly nodded and said, "Disciple understands." For more than 1,000 years, he had seen the Pillar of Heaven's mountains decline and fall bit by bit with his own eyes, but he was powerless to save it. Now that Master had returned, it was finally time to revive and create glory again. Huanglong Daoist's heart was filled with excitement and anticipation, and his blood was boiling. Ji Tianqing left the meeting hall and entered the secret chamber in the harem. He had used a large amount of spiritual stones and elixirs to cultivate in seclusion for 4 days, so that he had recovered to his peak state, and his magic power had increased by a lot. Although he had subdued the 9 sects and 18 schools, he did not dare to relax. He knew that this was only the first step of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains rise. The biggest threat to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was not the internal conflicts, but the strong enemies hidden in the dark of the North Underworld mountain. Before the enemies invaded, he had to seize the time to increase his strength. Although he was already an invincible existence below the martial sage realm, there was still a big gap between him and a real martial sage realm expert. Wuxia did not know that I had reincarnated, and he did not know the power of the firmament array, so he rashly barged into the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. His strength was suppressed by the firmament array, and he could only use 50% of his strength. I borrowed the power of the firmament array, and my strength was comparable to that of a martial sage, so I could successfully kill him. If I left the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, would not be a match for any martial sage. Chapter 1908. Ji Tianqing had a clear understanding of the situation at Pillar of Heaven's mountain. As for the future, he already had his own plans. In his previous life, he had personally created Pillar of Heaven's mountain and made it the 4th most powerful force in the world, second only to the 3 holy kingdoms. At that time, he was obsessed with martial arts and only wanted to surpass the limits of martial arts and enter the divine path as soon as possible. As such, he neglected the management of Pillar of Heaven's mountain and left the matters of the sect to the Huanglong Daoist. Now, it seemed that the Huanglong Daoist's management skills were mediocre and he did not have the ambition to dominate. Under the internal and external troubles, the Huanglong Daoist almost failed to protect the foundation of Pillar of Heaven's mountain. Now that Ji Tianqing had reincarnated, he had to restore the power of Pillar of Heaven's mountain and restore it to the fourth most powerful force, even surpassing the three holy kingdoms. Pillar of Heaven's mountain was his blood, sweat, and tears. It was also his base and training ground in the future. He could not afford to lose it. After repairing the array of the 108 mountains, Pillar of Heaven's mountain will be invulnerable. When that time comes, I will cultivate in seclusion and strive to reach the martial sage realm as soon as possible. Only then will I have the capital to settle down. As for the North Underworld Mountain and the external enemies, I will think of a way to deal with them. Ji Tianqing thought for a while and came up with a clear plan. At that moment, a ray of light flew in from outside the secret room and landed in his palm. Swoosh! He opened his palm and saw that it was a communication jade slip. As his consciousness entered it, an image immediately appeared in his mind. In the image was a clean and elegant room. It was Yun Yao's bedroom. Yun Yao was sitting at the table and looked at him with a smile. She said in a gratified tone, "Tianqing, you left for a few months without any news. You must be very busy recently, right? I wonder if you have settled down in Pillar of Heaven's mountain. Our child and I miss you very much and we are always worried about you. We hope that you can settle the matters in Pillar of Heaven's mountain soon and return safely. 5 days ago, my second heavenly tribulation came. With my previous experience, my tribulation transcendence this time can be considered to be daunting but not dangerous, and I've safely passed it. I have good news for you. You will be very happy. When I transcended the tribulation this time, I realized that our child is definitely a rare genius and monster in the world. At the critical moment of my tribulation, they actually helped me absorb 80% of the heavenly lightning, but they themselves were completely unharmed. I've thought about it for a long time. It's probably because the children inherited your bloodline talent that they can devour the heavenly lightning, right? When Yun Yao said this, her beautiful face was filled with a gratified smile. His eyes were as bright as the stars, and he was quite excited. Obviously, she couldn't wait to share this news with Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was also filled with shock and disbelief. His heart was filled with gratification and pride. We are the top geniuses of the world. Of course, our children will be peerless monsters, he muttered in a low voice as a happy smile appeared on his face. At this moment, Yun Yao continued, "Recently, I've been recuperating in the Cloud Water Palace and improving my strength with Lu Li's help. Apart from cultivating in seclusion, I've been teaching our children. Granny Long came a few times, and I asked her for some information. I heard that the situation at the northern border is getting more and more dangerous. The demons of North Underworld Mountain are coming aggressively. They have already broken through the border defense line and occupied many border cities. The entire God Nation's military forces have been transferred to the northern border to provide support. They are resisting desperately. According to Granny Long, the God Nation's army will be in a deadlock with North Underworld Mountain for a long time. It will be difficult to determine the winner within a year. It will only be a tug-of-war and a war of attrition to see who can last until the end. Tianqing, if you are done with your matters, come back as soon as possible. I don't want to continue recuperating in Luotian Mountain. I also want to contribute to the God Nation and fight against the demon army." After a while, Yun Yao finished speaking, and the image disappeared. Ji Tianqing held the communication jade slip in his hand. After pondering for a moment, he entered a message into the jade slip. "Yao Yao, I am doing well at Tianzhu Mountain. You don't have to worry about me. The current situation has just stabilized. Tianzhu Mountain is still in a dangerous situation. I still have a lot of things to do. Tianzhu Mountain is my painstaking effort. I can't sit by and watch it be destroyed. I must restore it to its former glory and make it my territory and training ground in the future. As for the matters at the border, you don't have to worry too much. Cultivating in Luotian Mountain is the most important thing. His expression was gentle, and his tone was calm as he spoke. After a while, he finished what he needed to say. Then, he waved his hand and sent out the communication jade slip. Swish! The jade slip turned into a stream of light. It quickly passed through the obstacles and flew into the sky, disappearing. Ji Tianqing closed his eyes again and continued to cultivate. A day and a night passed by quickly. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. Huanglong Daoist was already waiting at the door of the secret chamber. When he saw Jiang Yi coming out, he quickly greeted him. Disciple greets master. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and asked, Huanglong, 5 days have passed. How is the mission that master gave you going? Huanglong Daoist quickly replied, Master, the buildings and training grounds that were damaged previously have all been repaired. The arrays of the 18 palaces and 36 halls have also been repaired and strengthened. The disciples have also recovered their vitality. In addition, the news of the 9 sects and 18 schools surrendering has already spread around. Among the hundreds of cities, 80% of them are under the jurisdiction of the 9 sects and 18 schools. After the city lords of the various cities received the news, they have all submitted their memorials, expressing their desire to return to Tianzhu Mountain. From the looks of it, the 100-million-mile area around Tianzhu Mountain has returned to our sect's control, at least in name. Ji Tianqing nodded in satisfaction and brought him out. Master is going to repair the 2 divine arrays. You stay at Tianzhu Mountain and continue to keep an eye on the elders and attendants. Although the various sects came to besiege us, Master managed to find the 3rd elder and the guard captain. However, it is very likely that there are spies from other forces hiding in the sect. Huanglong Daoist quickly nodded and said, Disciple understands. Master, please be at ease. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and warned, previously, the various sects came to besiege Tianzhu Mountain and caused a huge commotion. Now that the news has spread, hundreds of cities know about this matter. The demons in North Underworld Mountain and many forces in the outside world will definitely know about this news. Master is worried that those forces will speed up their actions and secretly inquire about the news or sneak into Tianzhu Mountain to cause trouble. You must strengthen your vigilance. You must not make any mistakes. Huanglong Daoist repeatedly nodded and remembered these words in his heart. After a moment, the 2 walked out of Tianzhu Palace and arrived outside the palace gate. Huanglong Daoist stood in front of the gate and respectfully sent off Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing only brought Ji Bai and Shohei. He rode the black dragon and flew into the sky, quickly disappearing into the horizon. This time, the repair of the 2 divine arrays would be a huge project. Not only did he have to investigate the peaks of the 9 sects and 18 schools, he also had to check all the 108 peaks. Chapter 1909. Half an hour later. 8,000 miles away from the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, there was a mountain that was filled with spiritual qi. This mountain was one of the 108 treasure lands and also one of the bases of the 2 divine arrays. The black dragon landed on the mountain peak. Ji Tianqing stood on the mountain peak and closed his eyes to use a secret technique to investigate the mountain peak. He used the Armillary Heaven secret technique to merge his body with the heavens and earth and his mind with the entire mountain peak. He could clearly sense the situation on the mountain peak. When he had set up the 2 divine arrays, he had set up an invisible array in the belly of each mountain peak. Those small hidden arrays could connect the power of the 108 mountains and form a divine array of heaven and earth with a radius of 100,000 miles. In this way, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth within 100,000 miles would continuously gather at the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, making it a martial arts holy land that would never wither. After 100 breaths, Ji Tianqing found the problem. 3 of the 4 invisible arrays in the belly of the mountain near the ground had been destroyed, causing the mountain to lose its function as the base of the array. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing went into the mountain peak and quickly dived into the belly of the mountain. The belly of the mountain was dark and there were layers of rock that were hundreds of feet thick in all directions. It was abnormally strong. The 4 invisible arrays were set up in the rock layer, which was both hidden and strong. Even if there was a big earthquake, as long as the mountain peak was not completely destroyed, the 4 invisible arrays would not be damaged. The result could only mean that an expert had seen through the secrets of the 108 mountains and deliberately ordered the experts to destroy them. To see through the secrets of the 2 divine arrays and the 108 mountains, one must be at least a martial god expert. To destroy these arrays, one must have at least the strength of a martial sage. Ji Tianqing was in the belly of the mountain, repairing the arrays as he calculated. I have interrogated the 2 guardians of the boundless sect before. They admitted that Wuya had destroyed the arrays of a dozen mountains. Now it seems that Wuya was also used by someone. With his strength and experience, he could never have seen these arrays, let alone know the secrets of them. However, who was the martial god that instigated and made use of him? Other than Wuya, what other martial saints are being manipulated? Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing made up his mind to ask Tang Zhanlong face to face when he had the chance. Tang Zhanlong was probably involved in the sabotage plan. Ji Tianqing thought that if he could use Tang Zhanlong as a breakthrough to find out who the mastermind was, he would know the truth. Very quickly, 2 hours passed. Ji Tianqing repaired the 3 severely damaged concealment formations and restored them to normal operation. The 1,000-foot-tall mountain peak suddenly seemed to have a life of its own. It became full of vitality and spiritual energy. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth within a radius of 10,000 miles was attracted by the mountain peak and gathered here. Ji Tianqing quietly left, riding the black dragon towards the next mountain peak. Another hour later, the black dragon had flown thousands of miles and arrived at the next mountain peak. Ji Tianqing stayed on the mountain for about 2 hours and repaired another 3 damaged spirit designs. Then, without stopping, he rushed to the next mountain peak and repaired the concealment formations in the mountains one by one. Every few thousand miles, there would be 1,000 meters tall land with an energy vein. Because the spirit designs in the mountains were damaged, the mountains lost their color and withered. However, after Ji Tianqing repaired the spirit designs in the mountains regained their vitality and became full of spiritual energy again. At most, in 2 or 3 years, these mountains would be restored to their original state. Unknowingly, 4 days passed. In 4 days, Ji Tianqing repaired the spirit designs of the 24 mountains. In the process, he passed by the Gue Yuan sect and 2 other sects and carefully checked the situation. These 3 sects had always been loyal to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and had no intention of betraying or rebelling. Even when they knew that the 7 sects and 14 factions were going to besiege the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, they just watched quietly and let nature take its course. Ji Tianqing checked the mountain gates of the 3 sects and found that the concealment formations in the mountains were not damaged and were still intact. However, too many of the spirit designs in the mountains had been destroyed and the remaining few mountains could not support it, which led to the closure of the 2 spirit designs. This was good news as it saved him a lot of time. In the next month, he was busy running around. Back then, he used his great skills to move the 108 mountains and created 2 heaven and earth spirit designs. Even after 1,000 years, he still remembered the positions and distances of the mountains clearly. Now, he was revisiting the place, and with the Pillar of Heaven's mountains as the center, he traveled 100,000 miles. He checked the 108 mountains one by one. Most of the spirit designs in the mountains where the 9 sects and 18 factions were located were still intact. Only the Wuya sect and a few other sects nearby had their concealment formations destroyed by Wuya. Out of the 108 mountain peaks, only 22 of them still had their formations intact. The remaining 86 mountains had their spirit designs destroyed and Ji Tianqing repaired them one by one. After a month, he was covered in dust and his face was full of fatigue. When all the spirit designs were repaired and the 108 mountains became a land of spirit veins again, the landscape within 100,000 miles changed mysteriously. Many of the mountains became full of vitality and spirit qi. The spirit qi of heaven and earth surged quickly and gathered at the 108 mountains. The Big Dipper Starnet Formation and the Earth Fiend Spirit Praying Formation were finally reactivated. Within 100,000 miles, the mountains and rivers were beautiful and the spirit qi was abundant. Countless martial artists felt refreshed and the magic power in their bodies became more active. The Formless Formation was like a shield that protected the area. Mortals had their lifespans extended, while martial artists had their spirit qi abundant and their skills improved rapidly. Even the birds and beasts became more active and grew faster. Demonic beasts also gained intelligence faster. At night, the stars and moonlight that filled the sky would descend upon this region with countless tiny specks of light. With the baptism of the power of the stars, all the plants and flowers were thriving and thriving. The physique and strength of the demonic beasts and martial artists were also strengthened. All in all, the area became a land of cultivation. The one that benefited the most was the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. The Pillar of Heaven's Mountains regained its appearance of lingering spiritual light. It was as mysterious and majestic as before. The spirit qi of heaven and earth within 100,000 miles gathered here, causing the mountain peak to be covered with 5-colored spirit clouds. 5-colored spirit liquid would often fall. The dried-up 5-colored spirit pool at the back of the mountain was constantly accumulating 5-colored spirit liquid. Many spiritual cranes and spiritual beasts also began to migrate to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, flying around nearby. The disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains were cleansed day and night, receiving the baptism of the spirit qi of heaven and earth and the divine light of the stars. Their injuries healed quickly and their magic power recovered to its peak. Their strength also increased imperceptibly. Chapter 1910. The 2 divine arrays were reactivated. Ji Tianqing let out a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. This way, everything within 100,000 miles would be under his control. Heaven and earth would also be under his control. More importantly, after the 2 divine arrays were reactivated, the stellar divine cauldron at the foot of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains would quickly return to its original state. At that time, the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains would be even more impregnable and would not be afraid of any invasion. Moreover, after the stellar divine cauldron returned to its peak, he had more important things to do. During the process of repairing the array, when he arrived at the Battle Dragon sect, he asked Tang Zhanlong face to face. The result was a little surprising. Tang Zhanlong did not receive any hints or instructions, nor did he destroy the array in the mountain. Later, when Ji Tianqing arrived at the Boundless sect, he questioned the 2 guardians again. The 2 guardians fought to show their loyalty, wanting to win his attention and regard. Regarding the matter of Wuya and the destruction of the array, the 2 guardians told him everything they knew in detail. Unfortunately, Wuya did it alone back then and did not ask them to follow or help. The 2 of them did not know the details of the matter. They only knew that Wuya destroyed the arrays of a few mountains, but they did not know who ordered him to do so. Now that Wuya was dead, the clues were cut off. Ji Tianqing could not investigate further. Even if he had a guess, he could not verify it. Helpless, he could only temporarily put this matter aside and find another chance to investigate in the future. Ji Tianqing's mission was completed. He was physically and mentally exhausted, so he rode the Black Dragon back to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. He only wanted to return to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains immediately to check on the changes in the stellar divine cauldron. On this night, he was flying in a vast mountain range. He was still 1,000 miles away from the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. He was about to return to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. He was full of anticipation. The little black dragon also increased its speed. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly sensed a strange wave of magic power 500 miles ahead of him. That place was a mountain stream at the foot of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. It was deserted. Although the strange wave of magic power disappeared in a flash, it was very hidden. However, Ji Tianqing had fused with the heaven and earth, and could clearly sense everything within a radius of 1,000 miles. What's more, that magic power fluctuation was very unique. It was not the aura of a human martial artist, but more like the familiar demon race. Ji Tianqing immediately became alert. He ordered the black dragon and Ji Bai to hide in the dark while he rushed to the mountain stream alone. Shua! He used the divine concealment step, and his figure merged into the darkness. His aura also merged with the heaven and earth, making it impossible for anyone to detect him. In just a few breaths, he had teleported 500 miles away and arrived at the dark and deep mountain stream. Under the night sky, the mountain stream was pitch black, without the slightest bit of light. There were cliffs on both sides of the mountain stream. The cliffs were full of bare rocks, as well as jagged rocks and caves. At the bottom of the mountain, there was a 2-meter-wide stream. There was a gurgling sound of water flowing. Ji Tianqing snuck into the mountain stream without making any noise, carefully inspecting the unusual magic power vibration. After about 10 breaths, he found the source of the aura. It was hiding in a deep and narrow cave in the rock wall on the left side of the mountain stream. Ji Tianqing extended his divine sense and immediately saw the scene in the cave. He saw 3 masked martial artists dressed in black. They were hiding in the depths of the cave, quietly resting. The 3 martial artists had different body shapes and looked rather strange. One was more than 10 feet tall, as strong as a black bear. The other was the size of a normal human, with a slim and slender body. Most likely, she was a young woman. The 3rd martial artist was only 3 feet tall, like a 7 or 8-year-old child. What was similar was that the 3 of them were emitting strands of demonic aura. Even though they had set up an invisibility array in the cave and tried their best to conceal their aura, they were still only at the level of a primordial spirit. But they only had essence soul realm strength after all. They could not escape Ji Tianqing's discerning eyes at all. It's really the demon race. Ji Tianqing approached the cave slowly, a cold smile flashing in his eyes. He thought to himself, I've long expected that the news would spread after the 9 sects and 18 schools surrendered. But I didn't expect the demon race of North Underworld Mountain to come so quickly and send scouts to the bottom of Sky Pillar Mountain to gather information. However, these essence soul small fries can only serve as food. When this thought flashed through his mind, he was already standing at the entrance of the cave. Star-shattering fist. Without any hesitation, he raised his right hand and punched into the cave. The violent star divine fire condensed into a silver fist the size of a water tank. It instantly passed through the winding cave and blasted towards the 3 demons at the bottom of the cave. Boom! Amidst a deafening boom, the star-shattering fist struck the largest of the dark devils. The dazzling star divine fire exploded, filling the entire cave. The cave collapsed in an instant. It was blasted into smithereens, splashing out endless amounts of dust and gravel. Everything within a 50-kilometer radius trembled. The mountain stream shook violently, and the cliff collapsed continuously. The 3-meter-tall demon expert did not even have time to scream before he was blasted into pieces. His flesh and blood were also burned to ashes by the star divine fire. The violent star divine fire spread out and blasted the child and the young woman. The childlike demon was very similar to the ghost child that Ji Tianqing had killed. It was also a bloody and cruel demon. Its face was ferocious and ugly, and it had a mouth full of fangs. It had once slaughtered thousands of innocent people. After the star divine fire hit it, it directly destroyed its physical body, burning its flesh and blood into ashes. However, it had a Dharma treasure that blocked the power of the star divine fire, allowing its soul to survive. Swish! Its soul turned into a wisp of bloody light and burrowed into the rock stratum, desperately escaping into the distance. Ji Tianqing did not give chase. He used his mind to control the world and released a majestic force that attacked its soul from underground. Bam! With a muffled sound, its soul shattered and scattered into the rock stratum. After quickly taking care of the two demons, Ji Tianqing looked at the third demon, the young woman with a human body. He clearly remembered that when the star divine fire exploded, there was a flash of silver moonlight on the young woman's neck. It was that dazzling moonlight that blocked the power of the star divine fire, allowing the black-clothed woman to remain unharmed. At this moment, she had used the earth escape technique and burrowed into the rock stratum, escaping into the depths of the earth's core. Ji Tianqing frowned in confusion, feeling that the black-clothed woman was a little strange. Therefore, he controlled the divine power of the world and condensed it into an invisible giant palm that grabbed at the black-clothed woman. Swish! The black-clothed woman was caught by the invisible giant palm. She struggled with all her might but could not break free. In the blink of an eye, she was caught and brought back to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing revealed his true form and looked at her with a sharp gaze. She was wearing a mask, so her appearance could not be seen clearly. Only her forehead and eyes were exposed. On her pure white forehead, there was a silver crescent moon mark. Chapter 1911. Regardless of whether it was his previous life or his current one, Ji Tianqing could only remember one crescent moon mark. That girl who was as beautiful as a flower and as pure as the moon. Her name was Bright Moon. In his previous life, she had followed him for hundreds of millions of miles across the three realms. From the Tianxian continent to the Xinwu continent, and then to the upper realm, she had never regretted her infatuation. In the end, she had died in battle in the astral sea, dying in his arms. She had left behind an eternal regret. In this life, the two of them had been childhood sweethearts, and they were naturally close. Unfortunately, the two of them had been separated from each other and had never met. Ji Tianqing stared at the black-clothed girl in front of him, staring at the crescent moon mark. His gaze slowly moved downwards until he looked at her eyes. Although her eyes were covered with a faint layer of blood, they were still clear and lively. When Ji Tianqing looked at her, she also looked at Ji Tianqing. The blood in her eyes quickly dissipated, and her gaze became clear and bright. There was even a hint of joy and excitement. Ji Tianqing's heart skipped a beat, and he instantly understood. That's right, it was her. Regardless of whether it was his previous life or the current one, no matter how much she had changed, no matter how many layers of disguise she had put on, her eyes were still the same as before. Ji Tianqing was able to recognize her just by looking at her bright eyes and clear gaze. What's more, there was a silver pearl necklace around her fair neck. It was the heavenly star chain. Ji Tianqing dispersed the world's divine power and removed the invisible hand before slowly releasing her. "Cuckoo, why are you here?" He stared at the black-clothed girl's eyes and asked in a low voice. The black-clothed girl slowly raised her hand and pulled off the veil covering her face, revealing an exquisite and beautiful face. It was Ji Ku. She had a faint smile on her face, and she excitedly said, "Big brother Tianqing, I didn't expect to meet you here. This is great." Ji Tianqing carefully sized her up and found that her figure and aura were normal. She had not been demonized, which made him feel relieved. He frowned and asked, "Cuckoo, weren't you staying in the Tianxian continent? Why are you here?" Ji Ku stared into his eyes and said in a light tone, "When you left, I said that I would come and find you soon. Have you forgotten?" Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, but he soon smiled and nodded. "Of course I haven't forgotten. I just didn't think that you would break through to the primordial spirit realm so quickly and come to the Xinwu continent." "Right, how did you get to the Xinwu continent?" Why are you with the demon race? It's a long story. Ji Ku looked around and said in a low voice, Big brother Tianqing, there are other devil squads around. Let's change to a more secluded place and talk. Ji Tianqing nodded and used the earth tunneling technique, bringing her into a mountain peak and hiding in a cave. To be on the safe side, he set up a formation to hide the cave. Only then did Ji Ku relax and tell him what had happened. A few months ago, not long after I broke through to the primordial spirit realm, I rushed to the Nine Heavens platform in the East China Sea and tried to enter the Shenwu continent. I remembered the secret technique that you had taught me, and I used up all of my magic power to activate the Nine Heavens platform and open a teleportation gate. After I entered the crack in the sky, I flew through the void for a long time, but before I could enter the Shenwu continent, I met two powerhouses from the demon race. Later on, I found out that they were two demon lords who were out on a mission. They were sent to various continents to capture primordial spirit powerhouses and bring them back to Dark North Mountain to be refined into blood-clad guards for the demon race to use and enslave. I don't know why, but they couldn't enter the Tianxian continent. They just happened to meet me. I'm really unlucky. At this point, Ji Ku pouted gloomily. Ji Tianqing comforted her and asked, what happened after that? Ji Ku continued, I wasn't a match for those two demon lords, and after they injured me, they brought me back to Dark North Mountain. After that, I and a few other primordial spirit powerhouses were sent into the Blood Sea Abyss. After 49 days of tempering, those powerhouses were all demonized and turned into brutal and tyrannical blood-clad guards. Although their strength had greatly increased, their martial foundations had been destroyed, and their spirits had already been demonized. They would only obey the orders of the demon race, and they would slaughter endlessly. Originally, I would have been tempered and demonized like them, becoming a killing tool for the demon race. However, this heavenly star chain protected me and prevented my spirit from being tainted. Even after 49 days of torture in the Blood Sea Abyss, I wasn't demonized. At this point, Ji Ku lowered her head and reached out to touch the heavenly star chain around her neck. The silver pearl necklace was as resplendent as the stars, and a golden pendant hung from it that was as dazzling as the sun. She lovingly caressed the heavenly star chain and then looked up at Ji Tianqing with a smile. Brother Tianqing, thank you. If it weren't for the heavenly star chain you gave me back then, how could I have survived until now? Seeing her bright smile and clear eyes, Ji Tianqing's body suddenly trembled. He asked in disbelief, Cuckoo, you've already recovered your memories? Ji Ku looked at him with a smile and nodded slowly. Yes. During the 49 days in the Blood Sea Abyss, I fused with the heavenly star chain and recovered a portion of my memories. It was because of the heavenly star chain's protection that I managed to avoid disaster. On the surface, it looked like I was demonized and became a blood-clad guard. But in reality, my spirit and mind are still clear. After receiving her confirmation, Ji Tianqing's expression became complicated, and a deep sense of guilt welled up in his heart. After a long period of silence, he said in a low voice, Cuckoo, I'm sorry. Ji Ku was still smiling. She gently shook her head and said, Brother Tianqing, don't say sorry. You didn't do anything wrong, and I definitely won't blame you. Although neither of them said it out loud, both of them knew what she meant. Before Ji Tianqing went through the tribulation, he had not recovered Kenshin's memories and did not know the origin of the heavenly star chain. It was only during his first tribulation when he regained his memories during the tribulation of 7 emotions that he understood the cause and effect. That heavenly star chain was a gift from Kenshin to Mingyu. Kenshin had plucked 36 Big Dipper stars and 1 Eastern Gold star. It took him 3 years to refine it. Mingyu regarded it as important as her life. It was the love of her life and she wore it forever. When she died in the starry sky, a remnant of her soul was attached to the heavenly star chain and fell into the eastern sea of the Tianxian continent. 1,000 years later, the heavenly net demon emperor and the spirit star demon empress went to the eastern sea and coincidentally picked up the heavenly star chain. The spirit star demon empress, who had not been pregnant for 8 years, quickly became pregnant. It was the reincarnated Mingyu. However, on the night of her birth, a purple-robed cultivator barged into the palace and took her away. Not long after, she appeared in the royal Azure dynasty in swaddling clothes. She was carried out of the water by a koi and picked up by the royal Azure dynasty emperor. Chapter 1912. Ever since Ji Tianqing had regained his memories from his past life, he had understood the whole story, as well as Ji Ku's past. However, he had never expected to meet Ji Ku tonight. Furthermore, he had not expected that Ji Ku had already fused with the heavenly star chain and recovered a portion of her memories. Due to the guilt in his heart, the atmosphere became somewhat awkward, and he did not know what to say. However, Ji Ku's expression remained the same, and a faint smile remained on her beautiful face. The two of them were silent for a while before she took the initiative to speak. Big brother Tianqing, there's no need to bring up the past, and there's no need for you to brood over it. What we need to do now is to think of a way to deal with the demons from Dark North Mountain. We cannot allow the ancestor demon god to recover her strength and wreak havoc on Shenwu continent. When he heard this, Ji Tianqing immediately guessed something. He frowned and asked, "Cuckoo, if you weren't demonized, why did you disguise yourself as a bloodstrike guard and work together with the demons? Did you want to hide among the demons and investigate Dark North Mountain secrets?" "That's right. Big brother Tianqing understands me the best." Ji Ku nodded, and a crafty smile appeared in her eyes. Ji Tianqing subconsciously shook his head and objected. With a solemn expression, he said, "No. Cuckoo, I don't agree with what you're doing. It's too dangerous. Once your identity is exposed, you'll die without a doubt. I won't allow you to risk your life. You've already left Dark North Mountain, so return to Tianzhu Mountain with me immediately." His tone was very firm and unquestionable. However, Ji Ku calmly looked at him with a faint smile on her face. Her tone became even more firm as she said, "Big brother Tianqing, I'll listen to anything you say, but this is an exception. Over the past few months, Dark North Mountain has been investigating you and paying attention to your movements. I know a lot of things about you. I know that you've already entered Tianzhu Mountain and have taken over the 9 sects and 18 factions. You're going to develop and strengthen Tianzhu Mountain. However, I also know that Tianzhu Mountain's situation is very critical. Not only will it be besieged by the demons, but also by other powers. It is precisely because of this that I must stay in Dark North Mountain to help you scout for news and movements of the demons. I knew that sooner or later, you would definitely slaughter your way into Dark North Mountain and exterminate all the demons and the ancestral devil gods. I will fight by your side and welcome that day together. I will no longer hide behind you and let you shelter me from the wind and rain. I can also help you accomplish your great ambitions and work with you through the trials and tribulations." Ji Tianqing stared at her. Seeing her calm expression and determined eyes, he couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded. He suddenly realized that the Ku in his memory had grown up and was no longer the little girl from back then. From her body, he could vaguely see the shadow of Mingyu. When Ji Ku saw Luo Yunyang fall silent, he continued, "I've been in North Underworld Mountain for the past few months, acting as a bloodstrike guard. I've roughly figured out the situation there. The terrain of the North Underworld Mountain was steep, and it was shrouded in demonic mist all year round. Outsiders were unable to invade on a large scale. After tens of thousands of years of accumulation and settling down, the demons had long since made North Underworld Mountain impregnable. They had also set up countless traps and ambushes. Even a martial saint expert would have to return in defeat if they rashly barged into North Underworld Mountain. Therefore, it wasn't easy for me to hide in North Underworld Mountain. It was an incomparably rare opportunity." Ji Tianqing sighed and said with a heart full of worry, "Ku, it's precisely because North Underworld Mountain is easy to defend and difficult to attack that I can't let you stay there." Ji Ku lightly shook his head. Big brother Qianqing, don't worry. Right now, everyone believes that I'm a blood strike guard. My disguise has been very successful, and I've also gained the trust of the great devil sage and the 7 demon monarchs. As long as I don't remove my disguise, no one will be able to discover my true identity. Even if someone were to discover my identity, I can still use the heavenly star chain to save my life and escape North Underworld Mountain. You personally refined the heavenly star chain. Don't tell me you still don't know its power and effects. Regarding this point, Ji Qianqing was well aware of it. The heavenly star chain was refined from the most powerful stars, the Big Dipper star and the Eastern Gold star. This was a true divine weapon. Even in the upper realm, it was a top-notch divine object that the gods would go crazy over. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that with the protection of this divine weapon, even a martial god expert wouldn't be able to do anything to Ji Ku. Ji Qianqing felt slightly more at ease when he thought of this. Alright, since you've already made up your mind, then, be more careful. Think thrice before you act. Seeing that he had finally agreed, Ji Ku's brows relaxed and he revealed a happy smile. Don't worry, big brother Qianqing. I'll protect myself well. Ji Qianqing also revealed a faint smile and nodded. Then tell me what you found out while you've been in North Underworld Mountain. Ji Ku explained in detail. Ever since the ancestor demon god entered North Underworld Mountain, he has been pushing for the unification of North Underworld Mountain. In the deepest part of North Underworld Mountain, there is a mysterious sacred mountain. At the peak of the mountain is North Underworld Palace. The ancestor demon god is hiding there. Ever since the ancestor demon god entered North Underworld Palace, he hasn't shown himself. Usually, he would summon the 4 great demon sages and let them pass on his orders. I suspect that the ancestor demon god has been in seclusion to recover his strength. He might still be in the tribulation realm and hasn't reached the martial sage realm. The most terrifying blood sea abyss is behind the sacred mountain. The demon race army is fighting and killing outside. Every full moon, they will send back millions of corpses and flesh and throw them into the blood sea abyss. Under the ancestor demon god's command, there are only 4 great demon sages, more than 30 demon kings, more than 600 blood gods clones and hundreds of blood strike guards. In addition, there are more than 3,000 tribes in North Underworld Mountain and about 30 million demon race soldiers. However, the ancestor demon god has used a forbidden secret technique to make use of the blood sea abyss to rapidly increase the strength of the demon race soldiers. I estimate that in 3 to 5 months, the 5th and 6th great demon sages will appear one after another. At that time, the number of demon kings will also increase rapidly. The number of blood strike guards and blood gods clones will also increase rapidly. The more Ji Qianqing listened, the uglier his expression became. His eyes surged with a cold light. Just as I expected. I have long expected that after the ancestor demon god returns to North Underworld Mountain, he will definitely try to recover his strength as quickly as possible and desperately increase the strength of the demon race. The demon race is a natural invader and killing maniac. Their cultivation speed is too slow. Only war and killing can allow them to grow wildly. No wonder North Underworld Mountain dares to break the balance of tens of thousands of years and invade Luoshui God Kingdom like crazy. The commoners that have been slaughtered by the demon race have become nourishment and resources for the demon race to strengthen their forces. Ji Ku nodded in agreement and said in a hateful tone, "That's right. North Underworld Mountain's goal in invading Luoshui God Kingdom is to quickly strengthen their forces. No matter how Luoshui God Kingdom resists, millions of commoners will die. This war will allow the demon race to quickly rise." Chapter 1913. Ji Qianqing also knew that the ancestor demon god had to be eliminated in order to eliminate the demon race. However, he could only think about it. It was impossible. Not to mention me, even if a few martial saints worked together, they might not be able to enter the North Underworld Mountain, let alone kill the ancestor demon god. Ji Ku also had a helpless expression. He smiled bitterly and sighed, perhaps only the three martial gods could enter the North Underworld mountain and kill the ancestor demon god. Unfortunately, this is only a fantasy. Ji Tianqing also understood this point. Martial god Luo Shui and martial god Taihao were both in seclusion. They might not appear for hundreds of years. After all, he had done the same when he reached the martial god realm. To a martial god, wealth, power, and wealth were no longer important. They could throw away their emotions and desires. Everything in the world was just a passing cloud. The most important thing was to explore the peak of martial arts and pursue the possibility of ascending to the higher realms. After another moment of silence, Ji Ku continued, Brother Tianqing, ever since the North Underworld mountain knew that you had returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and subdued the 9 sects and 18 factions, they have sped up their operation. The great demon sage first sent 20 small teams to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to investigate. In at most half a month, a large group of experts will arrive. They will assassinate the people of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and create chaos and panic. This is only the first step of their plan. I don't know what else they have planned for the time being. However, one thing is for sure. They are all coming for you. The ancestor demon god had given the 4 great demon sages a death order. They must capture you at all costs or kill you completely. You must be more careful in the future. If I get any important information or secrets, I will try to send a message to you. I can't stay here any longer. Otherwise, I will be suspected by others. After explaining all this, Ji Ku was about to leave the cave. Ji Tianqing looked at her with concern. He said in a serious tone, Ku, I respect your choice and decision. However, I don't want to see anything happen to you. No matter what happens, you must prioritize your own safety. If you can't do it, you must retreat. Yes, I will remember. Ji Ku nodded to show that she understood. She waved goodbye to him. Brother Tianqing, I am leaving. You and senior sister must take care of yourselves. After saying that, she turned to leave the cave. She used a concealment technique to fly out. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky, staring blankly for a long time with a disappointed expression. Then, he turned around and flew back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. After returning to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, Ji Tianqing entered a secret chamber to meditate. After a day and night to recover, he too to cultivate to complete recovery. Underworld. He opened underworld to be to enter the underground to enter to go, to enter. Inside the spacious star divine furnace, the raging star divine fire was already burning, flickering with silver flames. To himself to the underworld to reach heavens to contain to reach to contain to God to speak. Moreover, as the Big Dipper star Luo and the Earth Fiend Spirit praying array operated, an endless amount of star power gathered within the divine furnace. The divine star underworld fire was also growing. It would take at most a month to fill the entire divine furnace. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile. The divine star underworld cauldron has been restored to its former glory. I can continue to cultivate the stellar body refinement art and quickly increase my strength. In the future, the burial of Heaven's sword will need to be tempered in the divine star underworld cauldron to become a divine sword. Most importantly, with the support of the divine star underworld cauldron and the 2 divine arrays, the heavenly dome array's power will increase exponentially. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains will also become unbreakable. He muttered to himself. His heart was filled with anticipation. Suddenly, he thought of an important matter and hurriedly looked towards the sea of fire. After using his divine sense to search for a moment, he found the array that he had set up previously and the glazed treasure bottle. The divine star underworld fire was too turbulent. It had already drowned the array and the glazed treasure bottle. The array had already been burned to a pulp by the divine star underworld fire and was on the verge of collapse. The glazed treasure bottle had also been burned red and was about to melt. In the glazed treasure bottle, the remnant soul of the white dragon god was hiding in the longevity vines. It was wrapped by the longevity vines and looked very anxious and helpless. Ji Tianqing revealed an apologetic smile and muttered to himself, if I had come back a little later, I'm afraid you would have died again. As he spoke, he took the glazed treasure bottle and placed it at the edge of the divine star underworld cauldron on the extremely hard rock wall. The rock wall was dozens of miles away from the divine star underworld fire. It would not be burned by the divine star underworld fire and could only absorb the sparks of fire. It was very safe. To be on the safe side, Ji Tianqing took out a few more materials and set up a saint-grade formation. With the protection of this divine array, the glazed treasure bottle was very safe. The remnant soul of the white dragon god could also absorb the divine star underworld fire under the nourishment of the longevity vines. After setting up the glazed treasure bottle, Ji Tianqing looked at the remnant soul of the white dragon god in the glazed treasure bottle and said expectantly, little white, your recovery speed is too slow. At this rate, I'm afraid it will take you 8 to 10 years to regain consciousness. It seems that I have to find a way to help you regain consciousness as soon as possible and find something for your divine soul to reside in so that you can move around more easily. Back then, he had taken in a few disciples. The yellow dragon was the eldest, the white dragon was the second, and the chess saint Xia Wudao was the youngest. The white dragon was the most thick-skinned. He was always sloppy and frivolous, like a playboy. However, he was the most desperate when it came to cultivation. He was also the most talented and had the highest achievements in the end. If there was one disciple that Ji Tianqing trusted the most, it would definitely be the yellow dragon. But if there was one disciple that he loved the most, it would definitely be the white dragon. Back then, he had snatched a dragon god spell from an old dragon king in the dragon realm. It was one of the top secret techniques of the dragon clan, a divine art that billions of dragons yearned for even in their dreams. Ji Tianqing had not only cultivated it himself, but he had also imparted it to the white dragon. Because of this, the white dragon had been able to transform into a true dragon of the 9 heavens after cultivating the dragon god spell. It had stirred up trouble in the upper realm, causing countless troubles and disasters. It had even been given the title of Little White Dragon with no regrets. Ji Tianqing stared at the white dragon's remnant soul in the white jade bottle and recalled the shameful things that this little rascal had done. He could not help but smile. Little White, wake up as soon as possible. You told me more than once that if you had the chance to return to the Shenwu continent, you would definitely stir up trouble in the 4 seas and bring chaos to the 5 continents. You also wanted to make the women of every race fall in love with you and bring 3,000 beauties to the dragon realm. You wanted that little female dragon to kneel down and propose to you. Even if her father did not agree, you would still elope with her. You would not be afraid of being hunted down by the dragon realm. You also said that you wanted the yellow dragon to be the second so that everyone would recognize you as the eldest disciple. Ha! Now that both of us have returned, you have the chance to realize your dreams. Why aren't you waking up? Chapter 1914. Outsiders only knew that the white dragon was unrestrained and unrestrained, just like a rogue. Only Ji Tianqing understood him the best. He knew that he was loyal and righteous. He was cunning and treacherous, but loyal and magnanimous. He was coarse and unruly, but meticulous. He would do anything to his enemies, and he had no regrets for his loved ones. Those who hated him to the bone. Those who feared him respected him like a god. He was arrogant and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, but he only respected Kenshin. He treated him like a father and listened to everything he said. It was such a complicated and changeable guy who accompanied Kenshin to the peak of the gods, and then fell from the sky. After being reborn, Ji Tianqing must help him to be reborn, and bring him to fulfill his previous bold words, and kill his way back to the 9 heavens. Ji Tianqing was silent for a while before he left the Star Divine Furnace. When he walked out of Tianzhu Palace, it was early in the morning, and the sun had just risen. Ji Tianqing asked Ji Bai to inform Huanglong Daoist to come to the study for an audience. He only waited for a quarter of an hour before Huanglong Daoist rushed over. After entering the study, Huanglong Daoist bowed respectfully and asked, "Greetings, Master. May I know what instructions do you have for me?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand to indicate that he was excused, and asked calmly, "Master has been away for a month. How is the situation at Tianzhu Mountain? Is there anything unusual?" Huanglong Daoist replied respectfully, "Master, everything is going according to plan, and there is nothing unusual. I have been monitoring the elders and deacons, and I did not find anything wrong. However, Great Elder secretly sent a few messages, and I found out and asked him. He said that he was dealing with the sect's affairs, and contacted a few sects and cities to give some orders. I confronted those sects and cities, and confirmed that Great Elder was not lying, so I did not pursue the matter." Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and nodded. "Even so, we can't let our guard down. Continue to watch them." Huanglong Daoist cupped his hands in obeisance and continued to report, "In addition, I also followed Master's orders and announced the recruitment of disciples. According to his Master's request, all young warriors above the primordial soul realm could sign up and accept the sect's assessment and selection. After the news spread to the surrounding hundreds of cities, it caused a great commotion and was discussed by billions of people. However, there were many people discussing this matter, but very few people actually signed up. In an entire month, only 9 martial artists rushed to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains to register. The strength of these 9 warriors was very weak. They were between the 1st and 4th firmament of the Essence Soul realm. After I tested them, only 2 of them passed the test and became my disciple, while the other 7 became odd jobs." Ji Tianqing was not surprised at all by this result. "Don't worry, we can only take things slowly. Although I returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and subdued the 9 sects and 18 factions, our sect has been weak for 1,000 years, and our reputation has long been weakened. When the martial artists in the various cities hear the news, they will adopt a wait-and-see attitude and will not rashly sign up. Unless our sect does a few more earth-shattering things and regains our former lofty prestige, we will be able to attract a large number of martial artists to sign up." After saying that, Ji Tianqing took out a jade slip from his interspatial ring and threw it to Huanglong Daoist. This jade slip records a demon-resisting manual. It records in detail the various mystic techniques and methods of the demon race, as well as the methods to deal with and resolve them. Make a few hundred copies and distribute them to our disciples, as well as the leaders of the 9 sects and 18 factions. Everyone must read it carefully, memorize it in their hearts, and recite it backwards fluently. I received news that North Underworld Mountain has already sent a large number of experts into the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Soon, the demon race experts will wreak havoc in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. They will either assassinate our sect's disciples or launch sneak attacks on the various sections. In short, the demon race will definitely create chaos and disaster and take the opportunity to invade the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Let everyone strengthen their vigilance and be more cautious." Huanglong Daoist received the jade slip with both hands and solemnly put it away. He cupped his hands and bowed. "This disciple understands. Please rest assured, Master." Ji Tianqing gave a few more instructions before waving his hand to let Huanglong Daoist leave. After Huanglong Daoist left the study, he hurriedly went to carry out his task. Ji Tianqing walked around the training hall and saw that the power of the heavenly dome array had indeed increased by about 4 times. He felt even more comforted. The burial of Heaven's sword was still hidden in the sword steel. It was doing its best to devour the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the divine fire of the stars, quickly recovering its vitality. At present, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was peaceful and the situation was good. However, Ji Tianqing knew that this was just the calm before the storm. When he was about to leave, Qian Yu's voice sounded in his mind. "Old Ji, we want to discuss something with you." Ever since Qian Yu broke through to the tribulation stage, he had been in seclusion in the sword world, working hard to break through to the second layer of the tribulation stage. Suddenly hearing his voice transmission, Ji Tianqing was startled. He asked with his spiritual sense, You and the little black dragon?" Qian Yu replied in a clear voice, "Of course. The little black dragon is a fool. He didn't dare to tell you personally and insisted that I pass the message to you." As soon as he finished speaking, the little black dragon muttered gloomily, "It's not like that at all. It's clearly you who want to." Before he could finish speaking, his voice stopped abruptly. Qian Yu had obviously interrupted him. Ji Tianqing only found it funny. He said in a playful tone, "Qian Yu, just say it. What do you want to do? If you think the Pillar of Heaven's mountains is too boring and want to go out for a stroll, then forget it." Qian Yu quickly denied and explained, No. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains is the holy land of martial arts that you established. Why would we dislike it? We want to quickly increase our strength and attract the second heavenly tribulation as soon as possible. Just like you, crossing the heavenly tribulation in just a few months and your strength will increase by leaps and bounds. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a gratified tone, Both of you are ambitious. Tell me, how do you want me to help you?" Qian Yu hesitated for a moment before he mustered his courage and said, "Old Ji, I remember that you created the stellar body refinement skill, right? If you use the stellar divine fire to refine your body, your strength will increase rapidly." Ji Tianqing frowned and rejected him decisively. "No. You have not reached the martial sage realm and cannot withstand the power of the stellar divine fire. Forcefully using the stellar divine fire to refine your body will only burn you to ashes." Qian Yu seemed to have expected him to reject and muttered unhappily, These are all excuses. I think you just don't want to teach us the stellar body refinement skill. Stingy." Ji Tianqing was so angry that he almost laughed. He scolded, "What nonsense are you talking about? If I really teach you the stellar body refinement skill, you may not be able to learn it. Even if you learn it, you may not be able to withstand the pain of being refined by the stellar divine fire. Do you think everyone has such a strong willpower?" The little black dragon persuaded, "Qian Yu, I have already said that old Ji will not agree to it. Just give up." Qian Yu refused to give up and continued, "Old Ji, I know that you are doing this for our sake, but you don't have to worry. I have a protective treasure that can absorb the power of the sun, moon and stars. I am sure that I can withstand the stellar divine fire. As for the little black dragon, it is a divine dragon that has gone through the ancient god's tribulation. There will be no problem." Qian Yu continued to pester Ji Tianqing and insisted on going to the stellar divine furnace to try it out. Ji Tianqing could not refuse and had to agree to his request. "All right. Since you refuse to give up, I will take you to try it out. If you are burned to ashes, I will not pity you." Then, he waved his hand and shot out a golden light into the sword steel. Chapter 1915. After entering the secret chamber, Ji Tianqing passed through the secret passage and entered the star divine furnace. The raging star divine fire was more powerful than it had been a few days ago. The surging waves of silver fire swept over with terrifying power. Ji Tianqing stood at the edge of the sea of fire and looked at Qian Yu and the black dragon, observing their reactions. The black dragon was calmer. A layer of hazy black light surrounded its body, protecting it. It did not rush into the sea of fire. Instead, it stood at the edge of the sea of fire, blocking the flames around it. Even though the flames were so powerful that they could break through its protective black light and leave scars on its body, it was still able to endure it. It gritted its teeth and endured the pain, not letting out any cries of pain or screams. Qian Yu was very lively. Relying on the protection of the magic treasure, it was wrapped in a layer of brilliant silver light and entered the sea of fire. The raging waves of fire kept rushing over, but they were all blocked by the silver light and could not hurt it. The ice-blue necklace had a diamond-shaped purple pendant hanging from it, emitting dense starlight. Not only was it protecting Qianyu, but it was also quickly absorbing the power of the star divine fire. Ji Tianqing carefully observed for a moment. He could vaguely see that the mysterious necklace was also a divine weapon. After all, warriors below the martial god realm all cultivated by absorbing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Even martial saints were no exception. Only after reaching the martial god realm could one absorb the power of the stars to become stronger. Therefore, he set up a large array on the ground and placed Qianyu in it. He taught Qianyu the astral body refining art so that it could use the power of the mysterious necklace to absorb the star divine fire to refine its body. At first, Qianyu did not understand the mysteries of the astral body refining art. It rashly came into contact with the star divine fire and was burned black and blue all over, screaming in pain. After Ji Tianqing's guidance, it gradually grasped the trick. After a few hours, it could finally control the size of the star divine fire and its pain was greatly reduced. Half a day later, it could cultivate independently. Under the refinement of the star divine fire, it gradually grew and became stronger in pain. Ji Tianqing stopped worrying about it and began to think of a solution for the black dragon. Little black dragon, when you underwent your tribulation, it was the primordial divine tribulation. It has something to do with the ancient dragon crystal you devoured, as well as your bloodline. He stood in front of the black dragon and said thoughtfully, when we were in the profound sky continent, we even went to the eastern sea to investigate your background. Facts have proven that you're not the East Sea dragon at all, but the upper realm's dragon god. In my memories, all the dragons in the universe originated from the ancient dragon realm. Therefore, the answer to your origins will definitely be found in the dragon realm. The black dragon listened attentively, looked up at him and asked, Old Ji, what kind of place is the dragon realm? You don't seem unfamiliar with that place. Of course. Ji Tianqing nodded, revealing a look of reminiscence as he explained, the dragon realm is an ancient and powerful world. It is the origin of all dragons. In the future, when we leave this world, we may go to the dragon realm. At that time, we may be able to solve the mystery of your origins. The black dragon nodded as if it understood. After thinking for a while, it said in a low muffled voice, Old Ji, actually, my origins are not important, as long as I can follow you. Ji Tianqing just smiled and changed the topic. Qianyu has the protection of a divine weapon, so she can cultivate in the star divine furnace, but you can't do so. I have the scripture of the heavenly dragon, which is the divine scripture of the dragon realm. It contains many secret techniques and divine skills of the dragon race. The secret technique I taught the glazed fire dragon originated from the scripture of the heavenly dragon. Instead of cultivating the star body refinement art, you might as well cultivate the secret techniques of the dragon race. It will help you the most. The black dragon's eyes suddenly lit up, revealing a look of expectation. Old Ji, you want to teach me the secret techniques of the dragon race? Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded, of course. I will first teach you the star transformation art, which is the basic technique of the scripture of the heavenly dragon. As long as you cultivate this star transformation art, you will be able to break free from the shackles of heaven and earth spiritual qi and absorb the endless power of the stars. When you cultivate the star transformation art to a high level and reach the martial sage realm, I will teach you the entire scripture of the heavenly dragon. The black dragon hurriedly nodded in agreement, feeling very excited. It was very clear that Ji Tianqing understood the divine dragon clan the most and would definitely be able to help it greatly improve its strength in the shortest time possible. Then, Ji Tianqing used his qi to send out a ball of golden light, which slowly flew toward the black dragon's head. The ball of golden light entered its mind, turning into a torrent of information, and merged into its memory. It hurriedly flew to the edge of the star divine furnace, coiled its body, and merged with the information in its sleep. Ji Tianqing watched from the side, in case anything happened to it. When it encountered something it did not understand or had doubts about, Ji Tianqing would be able to resolve them in time. A day later, the black dragon finally understood the star transformation art's incantation and remembered it in its soul, never forgetting it. Then, it began to cultivate the star transformation art, absorbing wisps of star divine fire to refine its dragon body and convert them into magical power. In the beginning, its movements were slightly clumsy, and its body was covered in wounds from the star divine fire, bleeding profusely. After Ji Tianqing's guidance and teaching, it gradually grasped the trick. Half a day later, it was able to cultivate normally and there were no major problems. Only then did Ji Tianqing feel relieved and left the star divine furnace alone. Returning to the secret chamber, he also began to cultivate in seclusion. This time, his seclusion only lasted for 8 days and 8 nights. He had consumed a large amount of spirit stones, elixirs, and other resources, and his strength had greatly improved. On the night of the 9th day, he suddenly had a premonition. He had a premonition that his 4th heavenly tribulation would arrive soon. At this moment, Huanglong Daoist's voice suddenly sounded from outside the secret chamber. "Master, I have an important matter to discuss with you." Huanglong Daoist's tone was low, obviously containing a hint of anxiety. Moreover, Ji Tianqing was cultivating in seclusion. If there was no important matter, Huanglong would not dare to disturb him. Ji Tianqing had no choice but to end his cultivation. He waved his hand and released a golden light, opening the door of the secret chamber. Huanglong Daoist hurriedly passed through the door and quickly entered the secret chamber. He cupped his hands and reported, "Master, something happened in the West River Valley." Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and asked in a low voice, "What happened? Tell me in detail." Huanglong Daoist said with a serious expression, "The West River Valley is not far from Tianzhu Mountain, only about 100,000 miles away. That area is rich in resources, and there are 5 cities and dozens of villages and villages. 6 nights ago, one of the cities was attacked, and tens of thousands of civilians were killed or injured. Then, on the 2nd night, another city was attacked, and 70,000 to 80,000 civilians were killed." Chapter 1916. Upon hearing the news reported by Huanglong Daoist, Ji Tianqing's face immediately turned gloomy. His first reaction was that it was most likely done by the demon race experts. Only the demon race would be so cruel, massacring cities at the drop of a hat. Massacring tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of people in one night. What's more, Ji Ku had previously warned him that a large number of demon race experts had entered the Tianzhu Mountains. Those demon race experts would create disasters and disasters, destroying the stability of the Tianzhu Mountains. After Huanglong Daoist finished reporting, Ji Tianqing asked in a deep voice, "Several cities were attacked, and more than a dozen villages and tribes were massacred. Even the elders and experts of the Shiha sect went missing. Such a bloody and cruel massacre was most likely done by the demon race experts. Huanglong, have you personally investigated?" Huanglong Daoist nodded and explained, "Just the day before yesterday, I personally led a team of guards to check the situation. But after I arrived at the Shiha Valley, I waited for a day and 2 nights, but I couldn't find the culprit. The other party didn't appear again. I suspect that there are spies of the other party hiding in the cities of the Shiha Valley. They must have heard the news, so they hid and didn't appear. But those few cities were in a panic, and I couldn't find the other party's spies." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "That's right, this is very likely. The demon race has several secret techniques that can turn humans into their puppets, or take over their bodies to disguise as humans. Even if it's you, without a target, it's very difficult to discover their disguise." Huanglong Daoist frowned and said with a worried face, "Master, I just left yesterday, and another city was attacked last night. The Shiha sect was helpless, and the Shiha sect master could only send a message to ask for our sect's support. About this matter, what do you think I should do? Ji Tianqing said in a serious tone, whether it's you or the people of the Shiha sect, you don't know enough about the demon race, nor do you have any experience in dealing with the demon race. If I want to resolve the crisis in the West River Valley, I'll have to go there personally. Hearing this, Huanglong Daoist hurriedly waved his hand and dissuaded him. No, no, no. Master, you said before that the demon race will definitely create crises and disasters to destroy the stability of the world. Their ultimate goal is to deal with you. This disciple suspects that the fiend race did this in order to lure you to Shiha Valley. Therefore, you must not go there personally. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, if I don't go there myself, who can resolve this crisis and find the culprit? This. Huanglong Daoist was suddenly speechless. He said tentatively, even if you want to go in person, this disciple must follow and protect you. Ji Tianqing frowned again and rejected him decisively. If you follow me to the West River Valley, who will guard Tianzhu Mountain? Huanglong Daoist pondered for a moment before he mustered up his courage and said, Master, the situation at Tianzhu Mountain is still rather stable. It won't be a problem for us to rush back after we resolve the crisis at West River Valley. Anyway, West River Valley is not far from our sect. Even if something unexpected happens, we can rush back within a day. Moreover, the two heavenly arrays and the heavenly array have been activated. Our sect is impregnable. There shouldn't be any accidents. In short, this disciple must not let you take the risk alone. If you want to leave Tianzhu Mountain, this disciple must protect you. Huanglong Daoist's attitude was very firm. No matter how Ji Tianqing tried to persuade him, it was useless. In his heart, the 1,000 years of foundation of Tianzhu Mountain was far less important than Ji Tianqing's safety. He would rather sacrifice his own life than let Ji Tianqing fall into a life and death crisis. Ji Tianqing could not persuade him and could only agree. All right, since you want to follow me, then let's go together. Huanglong Daoist heaved a sigh of relief and smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Therefore, Huanglong Daoist left the secret room and went to arrange tasks for the few elders. He solemnly instructed them. About half an hour later, Ji Tianqing walked out of Tianzhu Palace and came to the training hall. Huanglong Daoist had also made the necessary arrangements. He left Tianzhu Mountain with him and flew towards West River Valley. To be safe, Ji Tianqing did not take the Sword of Burial of Heaven with him. He even instructed it to guard Tianzhu Mountain. It was now the middle of the night. In the dark sky, there were sparse stars scattered around, shining brightly. A crescent moon hung in the sky, sprinkling down cold moonlight. Ji Tianqing and Huanglong hurried on with their journey. They flew across the night sky as fast as lightning and rushed towards West River Valley at their fastest speed. With their speed, it only took them half a day to cover a distance of 100,000 miles. Midnight was the darkest moment before dawn. The stars and moon had already dimmed. Tianzhu Mountain was silent. A tall and sturdy figure quietly flew out from one of the palaces and silently flew down the mountain. This figure was clearly a tall and sturdy man. He wore a black robe and a black iron mask, revealing only a pair of eyes and white eyebrows. It was a pair of cold eyes. They were filled with the marks of time, but they contained sufficient calmness and wisdom. He turned into a hazy black shadow and passed through the night sky like a breeze. He very familiarly passed through the layers of palaces and array formations. 100 breaths later, he arrived at the edge of Tianzhu Mountain. In front of him was a cliff. In front of him was a pitch-black night sky that seemed to be empty. However, the shield formed by the heavenly dome array was right in front of him. He hurriedly took out a token from his interspatial ring and held it in his palm. The token emitted a faint golden light that contained a special power. Swoosh! He leaped towards the cliff and passed through the invisible shield without any delay. He flew down Tianzhu Mountain. After 15 minutes, he left Tianzhu Mountain and landed in a valley 800 miles away. In the damp and gloomy valley, it was as dark as ink and silent. After the black-robed man entered the valley, he stood on a large rock at the bottom of the valley. He looked around coldly before slowly extending his right palm. His index and middle fingers lit up with a golden light. He waved his hand 3 times at a moderate speed, making a special signal. In the next moment, 3 figures appeared in the night sky 100 steps behind him. They were also 3 black-clothed experts. Although they were of different sizes, their auras were sharp and powerful. It was obvious that their strength was extraordinary. The 3 black-robed men stepped across the night sky and stood on the huge rock. The leader was thin and tall. His eyes were as sharp as lightning, and his aura was unfathomable. He wore a bronze mask with a green face and fangs. His hands were behind his back, and he emitted a cold and dignified aura. The most conspicuous thing was the purple mark on his forehead. It was a lifelike small sword that flickered with a faint purple light. Occasionally, there were flashes of lightning. The other 2 men in black held swords in their arms and stood behind the man with straight backs. They looked like guards and attendants. Chapter 1917. The one who was addressed as Lord Yi was the man in the black robe and bronze mask. He looked at the man in the black robe with a hint of relief in his eyes. "You've done well. You didn't let me down." The man in the black robe was flattered and said respectfully, "Thanks to Lord Ye's nurturing, I'm where I am today. It's my honor to be able to serve Lord Yi. Even if I have to hide in the pillar of heaven's mountains for hundreds of years, it's worth it." Lord Yi nodded slightly and said in a dignified tone, "That's great. As long as I succeed in this mission, you'll have the greatest merit. I'll reward you handsomely." The man in the black robe became more and more emotional. He quickly bowed and thanked Lord Yi, taking the opportunity to show his loyalty and take credit. Lord Yi looked up at the starry sky and said in a low voice, "I'm very satisfied with the news you reported. I didn't expect that damn little bastard Ji Tianqing to be Kenshin's reincarnation. No wonder Martial God Taihao thought so highly of that kid and even became the #1 God's disciple of the Luoshui divine nation. If I had known, I would have killed him in the cradle. How could I let him return to the pillar of heaven's mountains?" Hearing this, the man in the black robe was stunned and asked subconsciously, "Lord Yi, did you fight with him before?" Lord Yi didn't answer and glanced at him coldly. The man in the black robe came to his senses and bowed. "Please forgive me, Lord Yi. I shouldn't have asked," Lord Yi said indifferently, "time is of the essence. Take advantage of the fact that Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist aren't here. Quickly bring me up the mountain and finish this business as soon as possible." The man in the black robe hesitated for a moment before explaining in a low voice, "After Ji Tianqing returned, he reactivated the Sky Dome Array. Only the higher-ups of the sect can enter and exit. I've prepared a Dharma treasure. Lord Yi, please bear with it for a moment and enter the Dharma treasure. I can only bring you up the mountain." Then, he took out a palm-sized boat from his spatial ring. This boat was a tribulation-level flying boat that could accommodate hundreds of people. Lord Yi didn't hesitate. His body turned into a dazzling light and entered the flying boat. The other 2 men in black also hurriedly entered the flying boat. The black-robed man put away the flying boat and turned to fly towards the pillar of heaven's mountains. A quarter of an hour later, he flew to the sky above the pillar of heaven's mountains. He passed through the formation with his identity token and returned to the dojo at the peak of the mountain. The black-robed man silently flew across the night sky and landed below the sword steel in the middle of the dojo. He released his divine sense to explore the surroundings. Seeing that there was no one in the dojo within a radius of 100 miles, he took out the flying boat from his ring. Shwa! With a flash of light, Lord Yi flew out of the flying boat and stood below the sword steel. The black-robed man used a voice transmission technique to explain to Lord Yi, this subordinate has been hiding in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains for hundreds of years and has gained the trust of Huan Long and the various elders. In the past few hundred years, I have searched everywhere, but I have never found the shocking mystery. Huan Long was also secretive about this matter and did not mention it at all. No matter how his subordinates tried to pry, it was useless. After Ji Tianqing returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, not only did he reactivate the Sky Dome array, the sword steel also regained its spiritual light. The disciples and the sect all said that they saw the power of the sacred sword. Therefore, this subordinate suspects that the most likely place to hide the shocking mystery is this sword steel. Lord Yi nodded and looked up at the sword steel that was thousands of feet tall. He said through a voice transmission, "It does make sense." Everyone thought that this sword steel was just an ordinary stone steel used to commemorate the burial of Heaven's sword. But who would have thought that the sword steel also has spirituality and can produce miracles and cause strange phenomena in the world? He flew around the sword steel and ordered in a deep voice, "Keep a lookout for me. I want to personally explore this sword steel and see what mysteries it has." After saying that, he stood proudly in the night sky and released his divine sense into the sword steel to check the situation inside. The black-robed man also flew into the sky and looked down at the entire dojo from above. He monitored the movements in the surroundings to prevent anyone from disturbing them. Lord Yi stared at the sword steel with a sharp gaze and carefully observed the changes in the sword steel. His divine sense entered the sword steel and slowly explored the mysteries inside. Soon, he discovered that the sword steel was indeed not an ordinary stone steel. Not only was it made of special materials that were comparable to a sacred weapon, but there was also an extremely complicated array structure inside the steel. Vast and boundless spiritual chi of heaven and earth, as well as violent star divine power, were all accumulated in the sword steel. Lord Yi even had an illusion that he was not facing an inanimate stone steel, but a living martial sage expert. Indeed, there is something else. This sword steel is really not simple. The shocking mystery of Kenshin's ascension is very likely to be hidden in this sword steel. Ha ha ha. Kenshin, oh Kenshin, you are really unfathomable. Lord Yi was a little excited and murmured with anticipation. But at this moment, the originally calm sword steel suddenly released a formless divine power of heaven and earth and fiercely attacked Lord Ye's divine sense. Lord Yi was caught off guard and did not expect the sword steel to take the initiative to attack. By the time he realized that something was wrong and wanted to dodge or block, it was already too late. Boom! An earth-shattering sound exploded in the divine sense. Lord Ye's divine sense was instantly shattered by the formless divine power of heaven and earth. His divine sense was destroyed and his divine sense was heavily injured. His consciousness also fell into a temporary daze. Even his body began to tremble violently as blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. At the same time, a 4-foot-long pitch-black sword flew out from the huge sword steel that was surrounded by spiritual chi. This was the sword of burial of heaven. The divine sword carried a dazzling silver light and fiercely stabbed toward Lord Ye's forehead. Lord Yi was in a daze and his consciousness was blurry. He was completely unable to dodge the attack of the sword of burial of heaven. However, just as the sword of burial of heaven stabbed him, a layer of dazzling golden light burst out of his body and formed an oval shield that protected him. Bang! A deafening sound exploded in the night sky and fiercely reverberated. The sword of burial of heaven fiercely shattered the golden shield, and golden fragments of light burst out and filled the sky. The incomparably violent impact shook Lord Yi and sent him flying backward. He tumbled and landed thousands of feet away. Before he landed on the ground, a large cloud of black ash had already fallen from the black robe in front of his chest. These were the ashes of the talisman that had been burned. They scattered in the night sky and quickly disappeared. It was obvious that Lord Yi was wearing a saint-level protective talisman. At the moment of life and death, the protective talisman burned of its own accord and formed a shield that saved his life. A martial saint expert like Lord Yi would naturally have many kinds of protective techniques. Whether it was Dharma treasures, talismans, or secret techniques, he would have everything. Moreover, Lord Yi was a scheming and astute person. He had always been sinister and cunning, and his defensive techniques were endless. The fatal attack of the Sword of Burial of Heaven did not injure Lord Yi. Chapter 1918. The sudden turn of events caused the black-robed man to be overwhelmed with shock. His eyes were filled with fear. He was afraid that something would happen to Lord Yi, so he quickly flew toward the Sword of Burial of Heaven and tried to stop it. However, he was only in the tribulation realm. How could he stop the Sword of Burial of Heaven? Bam! The Sword of Burial of Heaven hit the black-robed man with a flash of light, and there was a loud thud. He was sent flying, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he fell on the training ground. At the same time, Lord Yi had already come to his senses. He punched out 2 balls of golden flames toward the Sword of Burial of Heaven. Bam! Bam! There were 2 more thuds, and the golden flames exploded, illuminating half of the training ground. The Heaven Burial sword was also repelled and flew back with a buzzing sound. Lord Ye's strength had reached the martial sage realm, and he was one of the best among the martial sages. The Sword of Burial of Heaven might not have the upper hand in a head-on fight with him. However, Lord Yi had no intention of fighting. After sending the Sword of Burial of Heaven flying with a punch, he came to the black-robed man's side in a flash and flew down the mountain with him. He used a secret technique to keep the black-robed man in his sleeve. Then, he held the black-robed man's token and passed through the sky dome array, escaping from the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. The Sword of Burial of Heaven chased to the edge of the sky dome array and stopped. After a few breaths, it flew back to the center of the training ground, entered the sword steel, and quieted down. At the same time, several teams of patrolling guards and 2 elders rushed over as fast as lightning. Then, many deacons and disciples also rushed over to check the situation near the training ground. The previous battle had caused a huge commotion. Not only was there a loud bang, but there were also dazzling flames, which had awakened many people. However, when they arrived at the training ground, they did not see anyone. Other than the residual dermic power fluctuations in the air, there were no traces of fighting on the ground. Many elders and deacons were puzzled, not knowing what was going on. After Lord Yi escaped from the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, he returned to the valley 800 miles away. Shwa! He landed on a huge rock at the bottom of the valley and threw the black-robed man out with a flick of his sleeve. The black-robed man fell awkwardly on the huge rock. He hurriedly got up, and without caring about his own injuries, he bowed and apologized in fear. Lord Yi, this subordinate deserves death. It was because I didn't investigate the situation clearly that you were attacked. Lord Yi threw the identity token to him and said coldly, there is a mysterious black sword hidden in the sword steel. It is most likely the legendary Burial of Heaven sword. This is such a huge piece of news, and you actually didn't investigate it properly before rashly sending me a message. If it wasn't for this emperor escaping in time, you and I would have been exposed. Once your identity is exposed, the plan that I have carefully prepared for hundreds of years will be destroyed on the spot. Lord Ye's tone was very sharp, and his entire body was emitting a strong sense of anger. The black-robed man was suppressed by the terrifying aura. He felt his entire body turn cold, as if he could feel the cold air of death. He was trembling with fear, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing to beg for mercy. My lord, please calm down. This subordinate deserves death, it was this subordinate's negligence. However, this subordinate has never seen the Burial of Heaven sword, nor has he seen Ji Tianqing use it before. This subordinate couldn't have imagined. Lord Yi didn't scold him anymore. He shouted angrily, for nearly 1,000 years, the entire continent's powerhouses have been searching for the Burial of Heaven sword, but they couldn't find it. Many powerhouses guessed that the mystery of Kenshin's ascension might be hidden in the burial of Heaven Sword. As long as they could find the burial of Heaven Sword, they could ascend like Kenshin and leave this rotten world. However, who would have thought that the burial of Heaven Sword, which had never appeared before, was actually hidden in the sword steel? The black-robed man thought for a moment and hurriedly explained, "Lord Yi, in the past few hundred years, this subordinate has also investigated the sword steel countless times, but didn't notice anything strange. This subordinate is sure that the burial of Heaven's Sword only appeared after Ji Tianqing returned to Tianzhu Mountain." Lord Yi frowned slightly and said in a cold tone, "No matter how the burial of Heaven's Sword appeared, it is now in the sword steel. This news must be kept a secret. With the protection of the Sky Dome Formation, the burial of Heaven's Sword has endless power and is almost invincible. Even this emperor can't defeat it. No matter what, this emperor must obtain the burial of Heaven's Sword and kill Ji Tianqing. However, this emperor must first report this news and then make a decision." Speaking up to hear, Lord Yi secretly clenched his fists, his eyes surging with an ice-cold light. The black-robed man thought for a moment and hurriedly reminded, "Now that Ji Tianqing and Huang Long have gone to the West River Valley, it is the best time for you to make a move." Lord Yi didn't comment on his suggestion and said in a dignified tone, "Just now, the commotion caused by this emperor and the burial of Heaven's Sword was too big. It has already alarmed the disciples of the Tianzhu Mountain. Now that the Tianzhu Mountain is in chaos, you must hurry back immediately. Otherwise, it will arouse suspicion. Remember, no matter what, you must keep it a secret and don't expose your identity." The black-robed man hurriedly bowed and said, "This subordinate understands. Go." Lord Yi waved his hand. The black-robed man didn't hesitate anymore. He released the two black-robed guards from the flying boat and turned to fly back to the Tianzhu Mountain. He silently flew across the night sky and passed through the formation behind the Tianzhu Mountain, quietly returning to the peak of the Tianzhu Mountain. The Tianzhu Mountain was indeed in chaos. Countless disciples gathered around the training grounds, searching for traces of the assassin. Lord Yi stood in the valley for a moment before leaving with the two black-robed guards, quickly disappearing into the night. Unknowingly, another 6 hours passed. When the sun was high up in the sky, Ji Tianqing and Huang Long had already flown over 100,000 miles and arrived at the West River Valley region. This region had a radius of tens of thousands of miles and was a vast river valley. There were many towering mountain ranges in all directions and a few large rivers flowing through them. After tens of thousands of years of erosion, there was a lot of fertile land around the large rivers. The people of various races rested and built 5 cities, dozens of villages, and tribes in this region. After thousands of years of reproduction, the number of people in the West River Valley region had reached more than 5 million. After Ji Tianqing and Huang Long entered the West River Valley, they first entered Liefeng City. This was an ancient city with 2,000 years of history, and it was also the largest main city in the West River Valley. The towering stone walls were covered with mottled marks from the passage of time. The rocks had also been weathered into a brown color. Looking down from the sky, there were rows upon rows of houses and buildings in the ancient city, as well as bustling streets and alleys. However, the 2 city gates were tightly shut, and there were soldiers guarding both inside and outside the city walls. There weren't many people moving around in the city. The atmosphere was filled with panic and a heavy atmosphere. There were also many dilapidated ruins that were still emitting black smoke, with some flames that were either bright or dark. Chapter 1919. In order to keep it a secret, Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist used a secret art of invisibility and quietly entered Liefeng City. Moreover, in order not to reveal their whereabouts and information, the two did not go to the city lord's mansion. The two shuttled back and forth in the city, releasing their divine sense to explore the surrounding situation. Huanglong Daoist walked and introduced to Ji Tianqing, "Master, the city that was attacked last night was Liefeng City. Several elders and dozens of disciples of the Shiha sect also died in battle here. According to the Shiha sect's report, more than 80,000 people were killed last night, and thousands of city guards died in battle. The number of murderers was not large, but they acted very quickly. The battle only lasted for 2 hours before it ended. So far, the 5 cities have been attacked, and the number of casualties is between 600,000 and 100,000. The Shiha sect is completely out of options. There is almost no one they can use, so they can only ask for help from our sect. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and looked around with a sharp gaze. He used his divine sense to envelop the entire city, secretly screening and investigating. To be able to kill more than 80,000 people and thousands of city guards within 2 hours, the strength of the murderers cannot be underestimated. At least, they are all powerhouses in the Crossing Calamity realm. In addition, in the ruins of the battle, there are still some scattered corpses that have not been cleaned up. There is still some devil chi hidden in those corpses. It can be seen that the culprit is indeed the Devil Clan. But I don't know where the Devil Clan is currently hiding, and whether they will appear again. Huanglong Daoist nodded repeatedly, and his face showed deep admiration. There are several ruins in the city, scattered in all directions. Master didn't even go to the ruins to investigate, but you can sense the aura of the Devil Clan. You are so sensitive to the aura of the Devil Clan. Ji Tianqing said indifferently, this is nothing. If you have fought with the Devil Clan for many years and killed millions of Devil Clan, you will also be able to sense it. Huanglong Daoist was secretly speechless. He thought to himself, when did Master fight with the Devil Clan and kill millions of Devil Clan? With his own strength, he killed millions of Devil Clan. Doesn't that make him the nemesis of the Devil Clan, making the Devil Clan tremble in fear and hate him to the bone? No wonder Dark North Mountain schemed to deal with Master. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything else and continued to wander around Lifeng City while releasing his divine sense to search for clues and traces. For a full 6 hours, he had indeed found many clues. Through these clues and traces, he could reconstruct the scene of last night's battle, deduce the strength of the Demon Clan's experts, and what secret techniques they used. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing did not find the hidden demon race powerhouse, nor did he know where the other party went. Even if he borrowed the power of the heaven-mending pearl, he did not sense the existence of the fiend race powerhouses. It was only in the evening that he had to stop his search. I've already searched Lifeng City 3 times, but I haven't found any hidden devil experts. The demons have all retreated, leaving no informants or spies in the city. Huanglong Daoist asked worriedly, Shizuan, what should we do? Why don't we wait in Lifeng City, wait for the demons to make a comeback, and then kill them? Ji Tianqing shook his head and calmly analyzed. Previously, the demons attacked several cities separately, but they all retreated after one attack, and did not attack a second time. This means that the demons did not do this to massacre the cities, but to create chaos, and purposely lure me out. Therefore, the demons that attacked Lifeng City last night probably won't come again. After a pause, he continued, however, Lifeng City is the largest city in the West River Valley. Just in case, Huanglong, you stay here to prevent the demons from making a comeback. Once the demons appear, send a message to Master. Huanglong Daoist hurriedly asked, Shizuan, where are you going? Ji Tianqing looked at the setting sun in the west and said with a serious expression, to the West River sect. Huanglong Daoist was startled for a moment, then suddenly understood. Disciple understands. You mean, the 5 cities have been attacked, and the next target of the demons will definitely be the West River sect. If we rush there now, we can wait for them to come. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, that's right, this place is not far from the West River sect, we can get there before dark. I must go immediately. Huanglong Daoist hurriedly dissuaded him, Shizuan, since the demons are likely to attack the West River sect tonight, then you can't go. The demon's target is you. If you go alone, won't you be walking into a trap? Even if you insist on going, Disciple will go with you, so that I can protect you. Although Huanglong Daoist's attitude was very resolute. Ji Tianqing's tone was solemn, and he disbelievingly ordered, "Huanglong, master knows what to do, you don't need to say more. You stay in Lifeng City, and wait for master's orders. Master will go to the West River sect now. If I find any movements of the demons, I will send a message to inform you to come." After that, he added, "This is an order, you can't disobey." This. Huanglong Daoist was suddenly in a dilemma, and he fell into hesitation. He was silent, and there was a struggle in his heart. After a while, he nodded and agreed. "Disciple obeys, but master, please be careful, and put your own safety first." Ji Tianqing nodded, then turned and left. He quietly flew out of Lifeng City, and flew to the west. Huanglong Daoist stayed in the city, still in the invisible state, and did not show himself. He hid in the highest tower in the city, overlooking the whole city, and monitoring the movements of the north and south city gates. The mountain gate of the West River sect was 30,000 miles west of Lifeng City. It was 1,000 feet high mountain, and it was also a land of spiritual veins, one of the 108 mountain peaks. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the West River sect, it was just dusk, and night was about to fall. He stayed in the invisible state, landed on the mountain peak, and secretly observed the situation of the West River sect. He saw that the West River sect was quiet, and there were few traces of people moving around. There was only one group of patrolling guards. It could be seen that many elders, deacons, and disciples of the West River sect had been sent out to guard the city. Currently, the West River sect was short of manpower, and the defense was weak. Fortunately, the West River sect had a mountain protection array, a sage-level array that had lasted for thousands of years, protecting the entire sect. Ji Tianqing hid outside the array, sitting on a millstone in the forest, and waited quietly. Time passed quietly, and soon, 4 hours had passed. It was already late at night, and the night sky was as dark as ink, and the cold wind whistled like knives. The West River sect was lit up with scattered lights, and it seemed particularly cold and quiet. Ji Tianqing was still sitting on the millstone, using the secret skill of turbid heaven to sense the situation around him. Suddenly, he sensed a powerful aura quietly approaching from the east. The aura was somewhat mixed, and it was obviously the aura of many experts mixed together. Chapter 1920. Ji Tianqing had dealt with the Devil Clan countless times. Whenever he saw black clouds or blood clouds, he would pay special attention and be cautious. Relying on the Armillary Heaven's secret skill, he controlled the heaven and earth within 1,000 miles. Therefore, when the black cloud was still 400 miles away, he sensed something was wrong in advance. When the black cloud flew close, his divine sense had already explored it clearly. There were 12 different auras in the black cloud. Each aura represented a strong Devil Clan powerhouse, and they were all above the third layer of the Crossing Calamity realm. Ji Tianqing quickly took out the communication jade slip and sent a message to the Huanglong Daoist. The target has appeared. As expected, they want to attack the Shiha sect. Come quickly. It was a very short and concise sentence. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and sent out a spiritual light. The jade slip flew into the night sky and quickly disappeared. When the communication jade slip flew out, a faint spiritual light flashed and disappeared. However, those Devil Clan powerhouses were very vigilant. 2 of them noticed the spiritual light flashing and immediately left the black cloud and flew over. Swish! Swish! 2 black-robed experts of the Demon Clan flew over, one on the left and one on the right. They released their powerful divine senses, which descended from the sky and enveloped the area. Ji Tianqing quickly used the invisibility skill. His aura merged with the heaven and earth within 1,000 miles and quietly retreated. He was not in a hurry to meet and fight with the other party. He decided to lurk in the dark and continue to observe for a while. After all, there were only 12 Devil Clan powerhouses in this black cloud. Although there were many of them, they were still not strong enough to destroy the Shiha sect quickly. He had to suspect that there must be more Devil Clan powerhouses lurking in the dark. At the same time, the black cloud quietly shattered and 10 Devil Clan powerhouses flew out silently. Everyone landed on the top of the mountain and scattered outside the mountain guarding array. 2 of the Devil Clan members were still searching for the source of the spiritual light, while the other 10 Devil Clan members began to move. While exploring the surrounding situation, they studied the mountain guarding array of the Shiha sect. They seemed to have a tacit understanding. After about 100 breaths, the 2 Devil Clan members could not find the source of the spiritual light, nor did they find anything unusual, so they had to give up. The 12 Devil Clan members joined forces and quietly set up a Devil Clan formation outside the mountain guarding array. In order to set up the formation, they used many talismans, blood crystals, demon bones, and other materials. When he was halfway through setting up the formation, a group of patrolling guards from the Shiha sect happened to fly over. The demon race experts immediately took action. Without hesitation, they sent out black mist and demon chi, which enveloped the 9 patrolling guards. Shwa! A few clouds of dense demonic fog were scattered over, wrapping around the 9 patrolling guards, making them unable to break free or escape. Their bodies were corroded by the demonic mist, and they quickly turned into pools of blood and white bones. They didn't even have time to scream before they all died. After the demonic mist dissipated, the blood and bones were also devoured by the demons. Just like that, the 9 Essence Soul Realm patrolling guards vanished without a trace. Time passed quietly. The 12 demon race experts continued to set up the formation. Their movements were nimble and quick, and their coordination was extremely tacit. Ji Tianqing hid in the dark and observed. Soon, he saw the clues. Looks like I didn't guess wrongly. These devils want to use the formation to break the formation. The 12 devils were just making preparations to set up the formation. With their strength, it's impossible for them to break the saint-level formation. There must be even stronger experts behind. That's the key to breaking the formation. Soon, 30 minutes passed. The 12 devils also finished setting up the formation and made their preparations. At this moment, a cold and powerful aura rapidly approached from afar. Ji Tianqing sensed the abnormality and used a mystic art to investigate. Indeed, a faintly discernible black shadow teleported over from afar. That was an elder dressed in a blood-red robe. His body was as thin as a bamboo pole, and he had a head full of purple hair. His entire face was hidden under a pitch-black cloak, only revealing a pair of scarlet eyes. There was no way to see his face clearly. Shwa! With every step he took, he could teleport hundreds of miles away. In a short span of 4 breaths, he teleported 400 miles away and arrived at the peak of the Shiha sect. When the blood-robed elder landed on the peak, the 12 devils all knelt on the ground respectfully and bowed in unison. The blood-robed elder stood tall in the night sky. He glanced at everyone before raising his hand to indicate that they could rise. After everyone stood up, he walked to the front of the protective formation and waved his hands, sending out streaks of purple and blood-red light to activate the demonic Tao formation. Then, he controlled the demonic Tao formation to gather an endless amount of demonic power and blasted it at the protective formation. Thousands of streaks of purple demonic light converged into a giant scythe that was hundreds of meters long. It slashed down like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Kaboom! An earth-shattering boom exploded in the night sky like a thunderclap. At that moment, the entire mountain peak shook violently. Cracks appeared on the ground, and the mountain collapsed into countless pieces of rubble. The protective formation that enveloped the entire mountain peak was also slashed open by the giant purple scythe. The crack, which was hundreds of meters long and half a meter wide, almost broke through the 5-colored light barrier. The light barrier, which was hundreds of miles in radius, shook violently and flashed with 5-colored light. The silent Shiha sect was also awakened from its slumber. Lights were lit in many palaces and mansions, and there were bursts of exclamations and shouts. Many martial artists appeared and flew into the sky in a panic to check the situation. The blood-robed elder was not moved at all. He formed a seal with both hands and continued to send out purple and blood-red light to control the formation to continue attacking the protective formation. Soon, another demonic blade that was hundreds of meters long appeared. It slashed at the protective formation with destructive power. Kaboom! Another earth-shattering explosion sounded as the demonic blade hit the crack. The five-colored light barrier could no longer hold on. The crack immediately collapsed and turned into a huge gap. The blood-robed elder turned into a streak of blood-red light and took the lead to pass through the gap and rushed into the Shiha sect. The 12 demonic powerhouses were also excited. Their eyes were filled with bloodlust. They all drew their weapons and turned into streaks of purple light and demonic fog, entering the gap. The demonic clan rushed into the Shiha sect and was about to start a massacre. A bloody disaster was about to befall. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing finally made his move. Five-colored divine lightning. He quietly flew near the gap in the formation and struck out with his palms, sending out two five-colored pillars of lightning. Each pillar of lightning was hundreds of meters long and contained the five colors of purple, red, blue, gold, and silver. It was a combination of four types of lightning and the silver divine star fire. When Ji Tianqing was in seclusion at Sky Pillar Mountain, it took him several days to successfully fuse the four types of lightning with the divine star fire. Even Kenshin from 1,000 years ago had not tried this. After all, Kenshin's heavenly tribulation was normal. It was not so abnormal. Ji Tianqing had fused the four types of lightning with the divine star fire. The process was very difficult, but the result was exciting. Chapter 1921. Boom! Two bolts of five-colored divine lightning hit the gap in the mountain guarding array at the same time, causing an earth-shaking roar. There were 4 demon clan powerhouses near the gap, and they were about to enter the Shiha sect through the gap. The five-colored divine lightning suddenly struck, which caught them off guard. As the dazzling lightning exploded, the magical power shields of the 4 demon clan powerhouses were instantly shattered. Their flesh and blood bodies were also shattered by the divine lightning, turning into countless charred pieces that splashed in all directions. Of course, the divine souls of the 4 demon clan powerhouses were not spared, and they collapsed under the five-colored divine lightning. Although they were powerhouses in the 3rd or 4th level of the tribulation realm, they had survived several heavenly tribulations and could withstand the power of the divine lightning. But when had they ever seen divine lightning with 4 attributes? What's more, the five-colored divine lightning also contained the star divine fire. That was the divine power that a tribulation realm powerhouse could not withstand. The 4 demon clan powerhouses were killed on the spot, and they turned into ashes without leaving any bones behind. This sudden turn of events caused the other 8 devil race powerhouses to turn pale with shock and horror. Some of them had just rushed into the array, and some were outside the array. But they all turned their heads and looked in the direction of Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing removed the invisible state and was standing in the night sky, looking at them with a cold face. Seeing this scene, the 8 demon clan powerhouses' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Murderous intent surged out of their bodies, and they roared with grief and indignation. Bastard! Someone actually sneak attacked us. It's a human boy, kill him. Everyone, don't let down your guard, let's work together to kill him. Damn reptile, I'm going to skin you and pull out your tendons. The 8 demon clan powerhouses all brandished their weapons and rushed toward Ji Tianqing without caring about their own safety. They slashed out overwhelming saber light and blood shadows. Suddenly, the dazzling saber light and sword shadows and blood flames lit up half of the night sky. Ji Tianqing's figure was also drowned by all kinds of brilliance. But he was fearless and ignored the attacks of the 8 demon clan. When all kinds of magic attacks were about to hit him, his body became almost transparent and looming. Without a doubt, this was the chaotic heaven secret technique. He already turned into 1,000 li of heaven and earth. Bang 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 bang. Countless saber lights and sword shadows struck him, but they were all shattered, turning into billions of specks of light that scattered in the night sky. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was safe and sound. He raised his palms again and shot out 2 dazzling golden lights at the 8 demon race powerhouses. Heavenly Dragon Palm. The dazzling golden light condensed into 2 10,000 feet long golden divine dragons. They let out deafening dragon roars and swooped down from the sky. The expressions of the 8 demon race cultivators changed drastically. Their eyes were filled with horror as they hurriedly dodged in all directions. Boom! Boom! The 2 golden dragons crashed down and struck the 2 devils on the spot, causing deafening booms to erupt. The 2 devils who were hit were unable to resist at all. Their bodies immediately disintegrated. Their souls flew out and floated in the night sky unconsciously. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the surface of the 2 balls of dark purple light was covered with cracks. Although they were not dead, their souls were severely injured and they had already fallen into a coma. Before the other demon race cultivators could save them, Ji Tianqing struck out 2 thunderbolts with his palms and struck the 2 balls of purple light. Kaboom! The 2 balls of purple light shattered on the spot and scattered in the night sky. At this point, half of the 12 demon race powerhouses had been killed and only 6 were left. The 6 demon race cultivators were still in shock. They scattered in the night sky and surrounded Ji Tianqing. Although they had the advantage in numbers, they stared at Ji Tianqing cautiously and did not dare to act rashly. The 2 sides were in a standoff. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to look at the peak of the mountain to check on the situation of the West River sect. The crimson-robed elder had already rushed into the West River sect and was on a killing spree. The square with a radius of 10 miles had become a bloody battlefield. Hundreds of West River sect guards, disciples, and deacons were attacking the crimson-robed elder with all their might. However, the crimson-robed elder was extremely powerful. He had already reached the martial sage realm and was in an invincible position. No matter how the West River sect people attacked him, he was safe and sound. On the other hand, he could kill many guards and disciples with a flick of his finger. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing frowned and revealed a dignified expression. He is indeed a martial sage elite. I wonder which demon sage is he? Seeing the crimson-robed elder killing the West River sect disciples wantonly, Su Mo was anxious and his body surged with violent killing intent. However, if he wanted to stop the crimson-robed elder, he had to first deal with the 6 demon race cultivators in front of him. At this moment, the 6 demon race cultivators had already arranged themselves into a battle formation. With the help of the demon race's secret skill, they launched an attack together. Demon Sky 6 Dao. The 6 demon race cultivators stood in different positions and waved their swords and sabers at the same time. 36 purple light demonic blades descended from the sky. The 36 demonic blades lit up the night sky and formed a special pattern that contained great power and mystery. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a cold light. Breaking Sun Sword. He raised his palms and formed a sword art with both hands. In an instant, 12 golden light swords were released and stabbed at the 6 demon race cultivators. Bam! 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 The 36 purple light demonic blades slashed at him. However, his body was transparent and merged with the heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, the power of the demonic blades was neutralized and he was unharmed. The 12 golden light swords penetrated the blockade of the purple light demonic blades and stabbed the 6 demon race cultivators. The 6 demon race cultivators were sent flying. The blood light shield and armor were destroyed and dark purple demon race blood splattered all over their bodies. Ji Tianqing sent the 6 demon race cultivators flying with one move and severely injured them. He took the opportunity to use his ultimate move to kill them all. Soul-slaying sword. He roared angrily. Golden light surged from his body and erupted with earth-shaking power. The golden primordial spirit golden sword flew out from the top of his head and into the night sky. It became a giant sword that was thousands of feet tall. Under his control, the giant sword slashed through the night sky and slashed at a demon race cultivator. Bang! The demon race cultivator couldn't dodge in time and was immediately slashed in half by the giant sword. He let out a heart-wrenching scream. The primordial spirit golden sword slashed again. The demon race cultivator's soul was also shattered and he died on the spot. The other 5 demon race cultivators were scared out of their wits. They rushed into the protective mountain array desperately and begged for the protection of the blood-robed elder. However, Ji Tianqing knew what the enemy was going to do. He had already controlled the primordial spirit golden sword to block the gap in the protective mountain array. Die! He roared with killing intent and controlled the primordial spirit golden sword to slash again and again. Soon, he killed another 3 demon race cultivators. There were only 2 demon race cultivators left. Seeing that they couldn't escape into the protective mountain array, they could only turn around and run. They couldn't care less about the mission or the presence of the blood-robed elder. Running for their lives was more important. Ji Tianqing immediately chased after them. He controlled the primordial spirit golden sword to chase after them. At the same time, the blood-robed elder killed all the disciples and deacons on the square and destroyed half of the West River sect. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.